Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Infodump. I'm here with Raven. Say hi, Raven.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about voice acting. I've been really excited about this for a while. So, I just realized that they can, they can see me adjusting your volume. Anyways,
All good.
yeah, technical difficulties easy. You want to start off with, sort of the, like, we got ourselves this nice presentation here. And the first slide, is it gonna do it? Oh, where have you heard? Oh, you got a fancy presentation. So
Yes.
So yeah, what? Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, just for full transparency, I actually did a voiceover thing for a class, so I'm just repurposing here. So a little bit of a fancy presentation, but not way too out there.
For sure.
So as a start, I guess I'll kind of introduce myself. So my name is Raven, and I am a semi-professional voice actor. I have been voice acting since high school, and I'm now a senior in college, so I started sophomore year high school. And so it's been a 6-ish year-long journey, and so it's been a super fun time for me to learn how to be a voice actor, and I kind of learned it myself from scratch.
Right.
And so I'm hoping to share all of that information with all of you for anyone who is interested in getting into voiceover.
Sweet.
So on the slide, what is really voice acting? Well, voice acting is, I'm actually curious, Josiah, what's your first thought about when you think about voice acting?
When I think of voice acting, I think of people trying to voice a character, like trying to voice someone who's not like you're not physically on screen, but like you're voicing a character, either like whether you're voicing, say, like a voiceover in a game or voicing a character in a show. No matter what, we got a nice bot in the chat. That's great. But yeah, that's sort of my thought of voice acting. It's acting with your voice.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to click through quite a few of those images, voice acting is definitely character work. So what you described is something called character work.
Oops, I need to go back. There we go.
Too many.
Yeah.
So what you described is called character work. So most people that think of voice acting think of like movies, typically anime, video games. Those are kind of the big acting things that people think about. But that is voice acting, but there's the field of voiceover, which deals with everything that's got to do with voice. So that includes commercials. So the commercials you watch on TV for all of those like medical commercials,
right,
that's got a voice actor behind it. When you're listening to the radio and you're hearing an advertisement for some kind of service, that's also voiceover. And there's infomercials. So when you're watching like the CDC talking about like coronavirus, that's somebody voicing over. That also includes e-learning. So all of these different things fall under the field of voiceover, and it's an actually super big industry compared to what most people actually know. Yeah,
there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than you'd think about. That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't until I really got into it that I realized just how much voiceover there is in my life. And we'll actually hit it on the next slide about just how big the industry is.
Yeah. 4,800,000 minutes of commercials that's a lot of minutes of commercials.
So yeah, every day, typically, and this is in the United States specifically, but there's around over 4 million minutes of commercial that airs. And for all of those commercials, that's voiceover work. And so actually it's $15 billion per year goes into voiceover. And that's how big that industry is. And so that's from like every different aspect. And there's been an uptick in e-learning and especially audiobooks. A lot of people, especially with Audible, are really utilizing the use of audiobooks and podcasting. And so that's really upticked the amount of voiceover work in the industry. So it's 15 billion, I think, from like 2015 or something like that. I don't remember the exact date, but it's just growing every single year. They're just putting more and more money into voiceover. Yeah. So there's a lot of work out there. If people are interested in getting into this field, there's so many different assets and parts to it where you can just dive in and find the kind of niche place your voice kind of fits.
Absolutely. I'm very curious to see how the numbers for voice acting numbers go, how they change as the year progresses, once we get those financial numbers out. Because yeah, the pandemic definitely has increased the demand for it, I'd imagine. And like I work online as a tutor, the e-learning stuff. That's not voiceover, but just thinking about how distance has increased businesses like that, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Sweet. Do you want to go? Was that all for this slide, or where's?
Yeah, I mean, I can add on to that just a little bit,
so go ahead.
especially with this pandemic. It's been a wild ride for voiceover. A lot of people, it used to be that you would have to go into studio, so you'd have to live in a big city area. That would be Seattle counts as one, but it's on the lesser end. But really big ones are Los Angeles, Dallas, Texas is pretty big actually in the anime industry.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's just in Texas. Georgia's had a huge uptick, and New York. So those are and Chicago. So like big metropolitan city areas is where big studios are, and people used to go in and record at those studios. But there's also a number of home voice actors. So I'm a voice actor who works from home. So my setup is here. I'm currently using my microphone for voice acting for this stream. And so I don't actually go into a studio. I have a home studio I built myself. And there was, with the virus, an uptick of the amount of people that had to start using home studios. And so the amount of home studio work became much more prominent, which was actually really good for people who work at home because it increased the opportunity. It used to be you have to be in these big cities to land these roles. And now, because of the virus, they're branching out and reaching out to people who have quality setups in their own home.
Yeah.
So I could be recording for a commercial in Hong Kong and be from the United States and just record that way. And
that's
so
pretty
it's
sweet.
Really cool.
Yeah, I like how you had to emphasize quality setups. You can't go in with a shitty mic and just they don't want all this crunchy sound. It's definitely gotta be quality.
I will definitely go over that in a little bit about how to get a quality setup.
Yeah.
So. Right.
So let's hear about your story. This podcast is very people driven, and you are the people here right now.
Absolutely. So, my story is actually kind of interesting. Technically, my first ever voiceover job was in middle school. So I was a TA for a class in middle school for block, which is a combination of history and English. And at the time, there was a number of students who had learning difficulties, and they had difficulty reading a lot of the text, especially in history. So we were required to read like the Greek myths of like Narcissus and like the Titans and Zeus, and they just couldn't grasp reading a book like that. And so what ended up happening is my teacher at the time said, "You have a pretty nice voice. Would you mind recording an audiobook?" Because our school at the time didn't have any. And so I went through and just read the book out loud, and we gave copies of those takes to students so that they could listen to them because they had learning disabilities and they were able to still keep up with the content. So a lot of my TA work was explicitly working with students who were struggling in classes because they just didn't learn in a traditional setting. And so that was one accommodation we made. So that was technically the first ever thing I did, but I never touched it again. I never thought about it. I just knew I was good at like reading stories out loud. And it wasn't until high school I stumbled onto a YouTube channel. At the time, it was really big, so I was a really big anime fan.
Yeah.
And I really liked Attack on Titan. And at the time, they had this huge uptick in audio drama series that were Attack on Titan based, where it was the characters from the show, but they were in different contexts and settings. So one of them was like zombie apocalypse, and the one I found was set in space, and it was called Attack on Space.
Ooh.
And it was basically the whole story retold as if it were a space odyssey kind of adventure thing. And I was fascinated by it, and I was listening to it a ton, and I realized that all of the people that were recording for that were at-home voice actors. They didn't have to be in a studio at all, and some of them in fact were college students at the time. So I was like, that sounds fun. I bet I could do that. And so through that, someone started their dishwasher like across from me.
Wow, it's a loud dishwasher.
I know, great timing.
Great timing.
Oh well, hopefully, yeah, it stopped.
That's good.
But so when I was in high school, I was like, that sounds like a fun hobby. I'll give it a shot. And so I found, at the time it was on Tumblr, like different casting calls for auditions for characters. And I just like went at it. I used my cell phone and I was recording on my phone. And that was how I really got started. And I didn't really succeed much when I was on my phone because I didn't know anything. I was just like recording and sending in stuff without editing, without worrying about takes or whatever. I had no idea what I was doing at all.
Right.
And miraculously, there was a friend, well, now friend, at the time it was a director, who I had contacted saying I had wanted to voice in their project, and they decided to give me a call. At the time it was Skype because Discord wasn't a big thing then.
Yeah, Discord and Zoom weren't there yet.
Yeah, so it was Skype way back when. And so I Skype called with her, and I worked with her, and so she ended up casting me for a part. And that, unfortunately, that project didn't really go anywhere. We published one episode, and then it kind of fell off the ball after that. But through that experience, I learned so much about audio editing because at the time we didn't have an audio mixer, and I was like, that sounds fun to learn. And so I just went on YouTube and looked up how to edit stuff, and then I realized that everything I was doing about voice acting was wrong.
Oh no.
So what most people will tell when you record a video, you can hear this kind of like white noise in the background.
Right.
So that's like your background noise. It's the room sound and room tone. And actually in voice acting, you don't want any of that at all. And so you actually preferably want to treat a space to minimize it, or if you can't do that, edit it out. And so you can either do a noise removal in something like Audition or Audacity and get rid of that background noise, or have a really nice treated space that you can't even hear it because it's so well insulated.
Right.
So that's what I ended up learning during that time. And so through that project, I had a friend that recommended me to a website called Casting Call Club, which is a website for people who are wanting to audition for projects or find voice actors for projects. So I started auditioning on there, and I started landing some roles there. At that point, I realized this was a fun hobby, but I wanted to like get cast in more things because it was so fun to be a part of. So I started watching and researching more YouTube videos and series about voice acting, and I ended up buying an XLR microphone, but I hadn't researched well enough, so I bought a really bad one.
Ooh, no.
And I didn't realize how bad it was until I was hearing this kind of weird tinny noise coming from it, and it just didn't sound significantly better than my phone.
Right.
And it definitely is supposed to. So through all the connections I ended up making through Casting Call Club, I ended up joining into various, at the time, Discord now became a big thing.
Yeah.
And so I was joining into different voice acting Discords. And through there, I made a friend in the UK. His name was Ben. And he was an audio engineer. And he happened to have an extra USB microphone that he wasn't using anymore. So he ended up shipping me a USB microphone so I could, you know, improve on getting better sound quality.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it was so kind of him, and he helped me so much. Like, shout out to Ben. You're fantastic.
Big shout out
Thank
to
you
Ben.
so much. So he ended up giving me his old USB mic, which I ended up using for a while. And then by the time I was a senior in high school, I had been voice acting using this mic for like indie projects. A lot of them were podcasts and audio dramas, nothing major. So I decided that, you know, this is fun, and I actually want to turn this into a kind of side career because I knew there was money in voice acting and voiceover. And so I decided, you know, I'm just gonna try and improve even further. So I, in my senior year of high school, saved up money, and I finally purchased a XLR microphone. However,
what does XLR stand for, by the way?
It's, I don't actually know. It's the kind of cable that connects into it, but I don't actually know what it stands for. There's a female side and there's a male side, and you plug it in two different places.
Oh, okay.
Which I'll go over a little bit when I talk about microphones, but I don't actually know what it stands for. So good shout. I should definitely look that up.
Right, that's a question for Google, which we can do during one of our ad breaks that I'm gonna remember to do so Twitch doesn't hit me with pre-rolls and
that's valid.
and screw over discoverability. But yeah, so we were talking about you joined Discords, you got your friends sent you the USB, then you picked up the XLR. You wanted to grow it into a side career.
Yeah, so the current microphone that I'm using, which is this Rode NT1.
Wow.
I bought when I was a senior in high school, and I didn't have enough money because I had saved enough for the microphone, which was a little bit over 300, and that was a lot for a high school student who didn't have a job.
Right.
That was a lot of Christmas money saved up, and I didn't have an XLR interface. So XLR microphones plug into something called an interface, which processes your audio, and then from the interface, it goes into your computer.
Huh.
And I'll go over the specific differences between USB and XLR. I think it's the slide right after this one.
Yeah.
But basically, in a long story short, I needed an interface to make my XLR work because I couldn't just use the mic alone. And so when I got to college at PLU, it just so happened that at the time they were doing a health survey, and if you filled it out every something months, they gave you like $20 in Amazon. So it was just like, how are you doing? How was your transition? So every time it came about, I would fill it out so I could get $20 on Amazon. And all of those $20 piled up, and I ended up buying myself an XLR kind of for free by filling out surveys.
Surveys are overpowered sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of like studies that they'll just pay, and especially college students, they'll pay students to get data. And I was like, yeah, I'm absolutely for getting free money.
Right. I'll
so
sell my information.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem at all. And it was just basic like health questions like, have you been feeling depressed? Have you been drinking? Like the very basic health surveys. So I ended up buying a interface through that. And so from that point onward, I really was like, this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to make this into a side career. And when I was in college, there was a contest started by Chuck Huber, who voices quite a couple of characters. He's most notably in DBZ for, I think it's Android, and I feel so bad that I'm going to mess up which Android he voices, but it's the big one. I'm not actually a big DBZ fan.
Was it 9, Android 9, that one?
No, I think it's Android 17. Yeah, it's Android 17.
Oh,
so
alright.
He voices Android 17 in DBZ, and he's also in a variety of other animated shows that I'm spacing on now. But he hosts a contest every year.
What's the name again?
Chuck Huber.
Chuck.
I can also look it up.
Well, see, I can do that, yeah. Yeah, Kara, I think Ray is doing pretty fine. I'm just gonna look at, because the name sounded familiar. I know anime through video games because I play Weeby video games. So trying to see if I'm right about remembering it. Here's his name.
He was in, let's see, Yu Yu Hakusho, Full Metal Alchemist.
I know Fairy Tail.
Akano,
Ace Attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So he's been in quite a fair amount of stuff, and so he has been hosting a contest now called Now Voice This. And it was basically for anybody who wanted to be a voice actor. You just had to enter this contest, and the grand prize was a studio deal. So you'd get to record in a studio professionally for, sometimes it's an anime, sometimes it's a cartoon. I don't think it's been a video game yet, but I've entered it every year so far, but that was the inaugural year. And so I ended up entering Now Voice This in college just to give it a try. I didn't make it past the first round. The first time I did it, go figure, but through that, I ended up joining the online voice acting Twitter community.
Nice.
And they're huge. It is a huge community on Twitter. And so I started using Twitter. I kind of, after the contest, didn't really want to use Twitter that much, but a lot of my voiceover friends are like, no, you have to be on Twitter. This is where all the indie projects happen, which is true. A lot of indie projects find voice actors on Twitter. And so I ended up going into the Twitter voice acting realm, where I made a lot more connections even further, and I started to grow my business.
Right.
So now I'm at the point where there are like requests. I will sometimes get messages on DMs on Twitter where people will request if I can be a part of their project. I also work as a project manager, so I've also helped run a couple of projects. I've helped with a couple of visual novels and podcasts in the past, and so I kind of have my own like mini business going on as well as other connections. Yeah. So it kind of just escalated from there. Since then, I've taken workshop classes. I've taken a lot of workshops and quite a few classes. So I was just trying to learn more about the field, because every like every single field of voiceover is different.
Right.
And so the way you voice act for like a documentary is drastically different than the way you're going to voice act for a video game.
Yeah.
And in fact, video games and animations are completely different things because video games have a lot of like grunting effect noises.
Oh yeah.
You know, like punches and kicks and all of that. And so there's a lot more of that going on. And there's a lot of like, depending on the character you play, it can be like really long, lengthy scripts without like dialogue back and forth.
Right.
So it can be widely different when you do video games versus like animations. And so I took different classes in different fields to try and find a little niche for myself. So I mostly voice act for indie animations and visual novels, and I have helped on e-learning for some, and that's kind of where my like little boat is, but I'm trying to branch out further into other fields as well.
Makes sense. By the way, Raven Caro says hi.
Hello.
And,
oh, hi, Caro.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, on the networking thing, with streaming, as I've, like, when I hit my best periods of growth recently, that's been when I was doing networking, and it's been harder to do networking while I'm in school, because school it's a lot of work. It's really interesting though. Like, you get a lot of you get places even when you don't win competitions. You don't have to get the grand prize. You just have to be there. You have to actively do things. I'm a big advocate for that. We're approaching the first commercial break, so that way Twitch doesn't kill me with pre-rolls. As a reminder, chat, if you have Twitch Prime or Amazon Prime Gaming, you can subscribe for free and get ad-free viewing. During our ad breaks, we will just answer questions from chat, say hi. It's just more interactive there than it is, during the standard stuff. But yeah, we're going to take an ad break so Twitch doesn't kill me with pre-rolls, so people can actually watch this without pre-roll ads. So be back in 60 seconds.
Sweet.
Yeah. Pre-rolls suck.
I feel that.
Yeah. You get 10 minutes.
Caro's actually one of my connections I made on Twitter, so I advertised into one of my voice acting servers. So
nice.
I'm glad he could make it.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. This is going great so far. I'm having fun. I'm learning a lot. I've been more quiet. Is there some way? Oh, Avery, that's a good question. Avery, hit slash for a second and see what commands come up. If slash commercial comes up, then you can do that. Otherwise, I might need to give you editor. I think editors can manage ads. I don't know, Avery.
Oh, I clicked the thing. I don't know what I clicked, but I clicked something.
You clicked something. You cannot run ads? Okay, well, I'll just remember to... You can just...
I clicked channel points, I see.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so now we're back. Is there more on this slide, or do we want to start heading to the next slide?
I think we can start heading to the next slide.
All right. Phone mics, USB, XLR. I'm using a blue snowball right now, by the way. I'm not sure what you think about those.
They can be a little finicky. Some people, like, okay, so some of the voice acting community likes to just, like, hardcore bash on USB microphones, but you gotta start from somewhere, and they are significantly cheaper than an XLR.
Oh, yeah.
And so blue snowballs tend to be a little finicky sometimes, so sometimes you can't get the best quality audio depending on what it is you're doing. For streaming purposes, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You just gotta treat your sound well enough. And then the other counterpart to the snowball is the Blue Yeti. That's also one of the most common ones. Which is shown on the slide, actually.
Oh, sweet. There's more clicks to do, right? Oh, well, there's not more to...
Nope.
Okay.
Shouldn't be. I think this is the last slide that I had, like, multiple click through, but I might be wrong.
Okay.
For starters, like I mentioned before, I started out on my microphone on my phone. So I just used voice memos, and that's how I started. I wouldn't recommend you start voice acting for stuff using your phone mic, but it's a good way to get practice about like how close is too close to a microphone, getting used to the sound of your voice, because surprise, your voice doesn't sound the same way to other people that it does to you.
Right.
And you can actually test that. It's a fun thing. Is like, I think if you put like 2 file folders or block the sound for here,
my mom talked about that Yeah, my mom teaches like choir and voice, or she used to, and she would do this, and it was weird getting used to the sound of hearing me sing, especially when I was going through puberty. That was an interesting time. Anyways, so like yeah, just getting used to the sound of your voice, and I was yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great way to get started. I would definitely practice using a phone mic first before you think about it, because you might realize, you know, and I am a strong advocate that really, if you want to try voice acting and you're willing to put the effort in, you definitely can. There's a voice out there that someone needs that you might just fit. Even if you're someone that's got like a monotone voice, there are monotone characters. There are like dozens of ways that you can still.
There's Corpse husband out there who does voiceover stuff, and he's got a pretty monotone, just really down here kind of voice.
Exactly, and so there's tons of ways that you can still utilize your voice, but the biggest thing is confidence and being willing to record. So it's not worth buying all the equipment and saying, hey, I'm gonna be a voice actor, and buying everything and then never using it because you realize that you hate the sound of your voice and you can't get over it. Then you're just wasting money. So I would definitely recommend start with your phone mic to just practice, get used to what you sound like, how far your mic needs to be, get used to the feeling of recording. So that would be like the basic start. And then the next level up is USB microphones. And some people will advocate that you just pass the USB and go straight to XLR if you know that you want to really get into voice acting. So like if you're trial running, definitely go USB. You don't want to spend too much for an XLR if you're just going to quit anyways. But if you know for a fact, this is something I really want to do and I'm going to invest my time in from the get-go, then it makes sense to go jump up to XLR because you're going to upgrade to XLR anyway.
Right.
And then you'll be saving yourself like the 100 you bought for your USB when you're just going to buy an XLR again anyway.
Makes sense.
So that's the little nuance about it. So some people will say, if you know, jump. If not, go to USB. So a USB microphone, like a Snowball or a Blue Yeti, is USB, so it connects directly into your computer. And so the thing with these microphones is because they connect into your computer processes your audio. So that means if I plug, for example, your mic, Josiah, into my computer, it'll sound completely different than what you currently sound like.
Makes sense.
Because my computer's a Mac and it does not process audio the best on its own. So the USB microphones can be finicky because you have to constantly plug it into the same setup for it to work consistently. But it's a good starter mic. It definitely is better than your phone mic. It's a really good start. So I would recommend if someone's interested and wanting to test the waters before they go like pro, or it's going to be a long time. So like between me getting a USB XLR was like a 2-year period, so it made sense. Now I got my USB for free, so that's a little special, but that was a 2-year period where I invested 100 to get used to voice acting before I invested, another 300 or 200 on an XLR. So I used it to practice on.
Makes sense.
So that's with USBs, and then the XLRs, which I talked about, that's what it involves an interface. So the microphone I'm using, which I talked about earlier, is a Rode NT1.
It looks so nice.
Yeah, and so it has something called a pop filter up here. So the pop filter prevents P noises. So if you notice when you talk in P's, you blow air when you say P or B or V, and that puffs air into your microphone. And so your microphone will pick it up, and it's called a plosive. And that's where you hear, especially when you're at an event and someone's speaking directly into a microphone, when they're using like the consonant P, you can hear it on the mic. So that's called a plosive. And so sometimes you'll have an XLR with a pop filter on it, and that prevents the P noises from hitting the mic. So the filter prevents the amount of air that hits the diaphragm. Yeah, so that's the XLR. And then, so I can trace this. So this is an XLR cord, and I don't want to unplug it, but it's on it is on the slide itself. You can see one of them is female and one of them's male. So one of them has 3 prongs that plug in.
I don't see a picture on this slide. I'm not sure why that's.
Did you download the presentation?
I'm just running it through Google Slides.
That's interesting because it shows up on mine.
Well, that's awkward.
Oh, well.
Chat doesn't get the visuals.
My bad.
No, it's fine. It's probably my fault. For some.
Yeah, it could be because I added it right before.
I wonder if I
so, like, it's
refresh,
not
it'll do
uploaded.
something.
Maybe.
I'll try refresh and then present, and then we're gonna just.
I'm gonna move along while that's
Yeah.
happening. But so
there we
on
go.
my microphone, this is an XLR cable, and if I follow this cable through, it connects to this, which is an interface. So I'm actually gonna pick up. Hopefully this doesn't destroy my audio to pick this up. I hope not. So this is an interface.
Yeah. Right.
And so this is one that can handle 2 microphones. And so as you can see, the XLR went from my mic into this box, and you can see there's a little there's a little square that's bouncing up and down. That's my voice.
Does
So
it
every
like go
time I
up if
speak-
you peak and like get louder and stuff?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
so
cool.
if it reaches red, that means I'm too loud. So right now where it's green, I'm okay. And
Right.
it's telling me I'm at negative 24 decibels, so it's turned down on the gain.
Yeah.
So it's not too loud. And so this runs on phantom power. Not exactly sure how to explain phantom power in an easy beginner's way.
Just send it.
Yeah, like basically though, there's a button here that runs an extra voltage through, and if I turn it off, you won't be able to hear me at all. So you shouldn't be able to hear me.
But
at
I
all.
do hear you.
Is it still as loud, or has it changed at all?
It's gotten quieter.
Yeah, so it helps with the boost of it.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so
It started to fade towards the end. I think it had some residual power or something.
yeah, so there's residual voltage running through it.
Yeah.
And so plugs in from the back end into my laptop through a USB. So rather than computer processing, hold on, there we go.
So now I can't hear you. Now I can hear you again.
Okay.
Okay.
It's because I'm messing with the box the whole time.
Right.
So basically what ends up happening is the USB from the box, the interface goes into my laptop, and then the audio, rather than going from my mic and processed by my computer, gets processed by the interface and then into my computer, which gives a better sound quality.
That's pretty
the
sweet.
Giant difference between those. And XLRs can get dang expensive. So like,
Yeah, especially
if you
with
want-
the So I checked out the prices of mics when I was trying to. So I used to, when I was streaming, use this mic on my headset, which is dog shit. It's really bad. So I was looking into mics, and I'm also not. I don't have a lot of money as a college student. So I while I was looking at mics, I was like, they're all so fucking expensive. So I got a Blue Snowball because it was $40. But yeah, especially with the pandemic, prices for mics have gone up because of the demand.
Yeah,
it's insane.
So like a USB typically is it tends to be, it's definitely less than 200. It'll be around range. Sometimes you can buy a used one that's significantly less. So if you got one for 40, that's a fantastic deal.
Yeah.
So they're much cheaper, which is why a lot of people will go for a USB first, because it's cheaper. The XLR range tends to be from 150 plus. So I think, again, I mentioned mine was close to the 300 mark. I got mine discounted off of a friend who switched microphones.
Right.
So I ended up buying it at a slightly discounted price, but it was still like 250, 260-ish. And so that's just for an NT1, but the other like higher end XLRs. So like, for example, Disney uses Neumann microphones. Neumann microphones are 1,000 plus a piece. And so it's super duper expensive, but it's well worth the investment if you have a well-treated space. It's important to note that regardless of how expensive your microphone is, you're paying for quality, so the more expensive the better, but it also depends on your space. So if your space isn't treated, having $1,000 mic does not help you because your space is terrible for audio recording. So you're gonna have bad audio no matter what.
Yeah, my audio is not great because I'm like in the corner of my room. I sound like I'm recording a podcast in my basement, but that's not accurate because I'm actually on the 3rd floor. But you know, I'm eventually gonna move out of the corner so I don't get so much bouncing off the walls and.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'll go a little bit into sound treatment a little bit later. But so the microphones can go up to 1,000, and then interfaces will be anywhere from 150 plus as well.
Wow.
So, you know, it can get quite expensive. So it's not a cheap hobby if you're wanting to go semi-pro. If you want to just get a cheap USB mic and do podcasts, you don't need to get that expensive of a microphone. That's mostly for people that are really wanting to go in for, you know, getting money out of it.
Yeah.
Because you could make it by with never making a cent on voiceover and just doing it for fun as a hobby, but using a USB microphone, and that's totally valid and fine. Some people can still make USBs work at the professional level, but oftentimes when you get into paid projects, they'll require XLR quality.
Right.
So it really depends. So sometimes they'll ban, they're like, we'll take a USB if it's like got really pristine quality, but if you're not at the same level as an XLR, they'll cast your audition out. And so audio quality matters.
That makes sense. Voice technique. Is that, were we moving on to voice technique? Yeah. I just making sure that maybe we'll have you like say do like this or something so I know when to move on. Because right now I'm just like, what do I do?
No, you're good.
Yeah.
So voice technique. So fun fact, voice acting is not just reading out loud, because your tone matters a ton. If I say thank you versus thank you, there's a very big difference in my tone, and the meaning of what I just said changed.
Right.
So with the first version, very straightforward. With the second one, you could tell I sounded thankful. And so your tone definitely matters. I can't just read text out loud, because if you can imagine being in like a high school classroom and your professor or teacher's like, can you read this text out loud, and somebody reads it and it's terrible to listen to, that is what you want to avoid.
Makes sense.
Tone is one of the biggest things in voiceover. The way you read and changes meaning entirely. So like I said, if I'm angry, if I'm reading something angry, and I can say, I'm mad at you, and you would kind of think maybe I'm annoyed but not mad, versus,
right,
I am so mad at you right now. So like, you know, there's
you're trying to convey the emotion through the voice. That makes sense.
Exactly. So the tone matters a whole ton. So you need to be able to have a convincing tone. It's not just having a good voice. You need to be able to convey what you're trying to say. So voice acting, regardless of it's a character, is always acting. You're always trying to convince someone of something. So if you're in a commercial, you sometimes still have a character. So like you're given like, this character is a 30-year-old mom who's advertising for coffee or something, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you're trying to convince someone that you are a mom who wants to buy coffee. So you are still acting.
Makes sense.
Even if you're doing documentaries, you're trying to convey a story. So you're trying to convince the audience to be enticed. So you're always trying to convince someone of something.
Right.
So with voice technique, especially with tone, you have to make sure your tone matches what you're trying to convey. So if you're trying to sound angry, sound angry. Don't hold back. That's the biggest problem that people have as voice acting, is they hold back. They're too afraid to yell.
Yeah.
Falling off a cliff. Is not convincing. You need to sound like you're falling. Now, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to peek out and destroy everybody's ears. But
right.
You want to be as forceful as possible to show, well, not forceful, but as close to the tone you want to convey as possible. And you'll see a lot of voice actors behind scene. There's so much motion happening.
Yeah. No, especially like this is why like I enjoy the visual aspect of this podcast, because when I talk I tend to be pretty I tend to move a lot. I get it though, because like when I'm mad I'm more animated, and so I have to be more animated to sound mad. I get it. To me it's just like a two-way street.
And the big thing about that is body language. So around 60 to 70% of how you perceive emotion. And when you're a voice actor, you can't convey a single bit of body language. So if I'm an onstage actor, I can show I'm sad by looking downcast, by being a little quieter. You know, there are ways that I can show that emotion. To show that I am sad through my voice alone, I have to majorly over-exaggerate to compensate the fact that you can't see me.
Right.
So that's oftentimes why you'll see over-exaggerated movement, because they're trying to bring the most out of their performance as possible to try and maximize the amount of emotion. Now, sometimes they'll tell you to dial it back, so sometimes you've gone too far, but this is something I've heard said by so many people. Always put 100% in. It is so much easier to dial back than it is to be like, give me more.
That makes sense.
Because if especially with landing an audition, if I hear that you have maxed out like 100 and it was too much, I know that you can definitely do less.
Right.
If you give me more, I know you can do less. If you give me less, I don't know if you can do more.
Yeah, you want
to keep asking for it.
You're effectively trying to show your range, and then people can decide what parts of the range they want for their project.
Exactly. You don't want to over-deliver. So you always want to over-deliver. Don't under-deliver.
Right. That's
Exactly.
I mean, that's a concept I get in a lot of things I do. Like, when I was playing baseball in high school, it's better to do something wrong than to do nothing. Like, to me, it's the same concept. It's better to try, to put effort in, and as much effort as you can, and then have to learn about how to, better tune it than not. So that's really cool.
Yeah,
I really enjoy that.
It's always best to put the best that you can forward, because they can always coach you to get lesser, as opposed to always telling you to give more of it. Because sometimes some directors just don't have the patience to coach you to get the sound they want.
Right.
If they know that you can do above, they know that they can somehow get you to be under. They don't want to figure out if you're not even capable of doing it in the first place. So, thing with voice technique. The other thing is acting ability. You gotta be convincing. This goes with tone, and it's voice acting. So you have to be able to act. And unfortunately, not everybody is able to act. This doesn't mean you can't try to be a voice actor. You can always take classes. Some people have more natural abilities than others. Some people really just can nail acting down.
Right.
Some people need more practice. It's the same with like learning an instrument or learning a language. Some people naturally pick it up better, but it's a skill. So you can hone it, you can practice on it, you can improve. There's always something to improve because it's a skill. And so I would shy away from, just because you're not a natural actor, saying, well, I just can't fully act. If you really want to do this and you're willing to put the effort in, you'll see improvement.
Yeah, it's a labor of love, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You get out what you put in. Yeah.
It's not just like I'm gonna pick up a microphone, now I'm a voice actor. It is not that easy. It requires a fair amount of nuance and understanding characters.
Absolutely. So it's about that time again. I have to run another. If I run a 60-second ad break, we get 20 minutes of pre-rolls off, but it's only 60 seconds away. If I run a 90-second, it's a full half hour off, but it's also 90 seconds away. So chat, real quick, 60-second ad or 90-second ad? Tell me. Because I don't want to make y'all want to leave, but I have to do this because Twitch does pre-rolls, and I want people to be able to come in. But yeah, I'm just gonna run a 90 because I don't want to have to be worried about the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love this, the voice acting stuff. I've been doing script readings when I'm tutoring with students who have, like, they get critiques about, hey, like, they get critiques from their teachers, like, hey, they don't read very well, they don't have confidence in their reading. I'm like, well, what better way to build confidence than to have them try to embody a character? And hi, Caden. No, I didn't get Beyond Meat. Remember I told you they didn't have it? I said, yeah, I said they didn't have Beyond Meat. You can use my car to go get Beyond Meat if you want.
What is Beyond Meat?
It's meat made from vegetables. Yeah, no, they didn't have it at QFC, and I had gotten everything else I needed from the store. But yeah, it's actually really good. At the deli I worked at, Pickles Deli, they had really good, like, they made really good burgers with Beyond Meat. Really, like, it tastes like meat. It bleeds like meat too. It's really weird.
Yeah, it's so weird. The first time I saw like a bleed, I was like, what is it bleeding?
Yeah.
And I think it's beet juice.
I think it's beet juice. I think that's what it is.
So it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised the first time I ever had one.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I forgot to, and the ad's expiring while I'm saying this, but oh well, people are going to hear it. But I forgot to turn off the soundboard for the podcast. So somebody might donate money and get a soundboard or somebody might use their channel points and play a sound during this. And if so, I'm sorry. I just forgot to turn it off for the podcast episode. That's also like the emote wall you saw going around. Like there was an emote bouncing around the screen. I forgot. That's something I do for my normal streams. I forgot to turn that off too. Anyways, yeah, if y'all don't remember, if you don't want to get ads, you can follow me and give me if you have Amazon Prime, you get a free sub to a Twitch channel, and on my channel it gives you ad-free viewing, access to emotes, and you don't have to do ad-free viewing, access to emotes, and you make me happy. So there's that too. And anyways, we're talking about acting, voice acting, getting into acting, putting work in.
So, continuing on from acting ability and tone, other big thing is pitch. You don't have to have the most insane range out there to be able to voice act. So, most of the voices I do tend to be in this range. Sometimes it tends to be higher. This tends to be the voice that I voice act with, which is slightly higher than my normal speaking voice. But I don't stretch a whole ton. Now, sometimes I will play children, and in which case... Yeah, no, it's actually, here, give me a line, I'll demonstrate.
Mom, I'm hungry, when's dinner?
Mom, I'm hungry, when's dinner?
Oh my god! Right? That's amazing, what?
Yeah, so when you have pitch ability, you can land at UB. So I am definitely not a prepubescent child boy, but I can sound like it.
That was straight out of the Pokemon, like, Indigo League anime, Ash Ketchum voice.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people who voice for young, like, male characters are actually voiced by females. So one example being Ash Ketchum. Tara Strong voices so many characters, and she does Timmy Turner.
Yeah.
From Fairly Odd Parents. And so you'd be surprised, like, Naruto was voiced by a female.
Yeah.
And so... you know, your gender or your sex does not dictate what you voice. Now, I've had, like, male friends who can sound so sultry. Like, as a female woman, it's terrifying.
Right.
So, like, some people's ranges are just out there. Now, you don't need to have the biggest range out there. Like I said, I mostly voice act within this range. A lot of my characters sound here-ish.
Yeah.
Minus me playing children sometimes. But pitch does matter. That can really help you. Being able to go higher or lower toned, it's okay if you start here. When I first started voice acting, I couldn't do that voice I just did at all.
Right.
I could not. It was impossible for me. I could hit it in a very husky way, but it would hurt my vocal cords to do so. And so that actually took practice. So your voice is a muscle. Your voice box is a muscle. And just like with singing, you improve by practice. So the more you voice act, the more you practice, the more you stretch your vocal cords, the better chances you'll have of increasing your pitch. Now, I will never sound like Morgan Freeman.
Oh, no.
I will not. But I can still keep working on my lower tone so I can sound deeper than my normal tone. Now, I can do the opposite and also go really high. But I didn't start that way. And everybody has natural things they can do. So for me, I struggled to go low. It was really hard because my voice is naturally mid-tone.
Right.
Like mid to high. And so I struggled with it. But I had no problems doing like high-pitched female children when I was 16. That was never an issue. Now that can be the reverse for somebody else. Maybe, especially for guys, you can hit the low tones, no problem.
Yeah.
But it's the high tones that you're like, I'm not sure I can do that. And so, you know, it really depends on the person, but pitch can definitely help. And the other big thing is pacing. So, as you've probably gathered, I'm a very fast speaker, naturally.
Yeah. Oh, same here.
Yeah, so I speak super fast, but the way you read and the speed at which you read can also change the way something's coming across. So, if you were to read faster, it conveys franticness, it conveys urgency. Versus if you read something slower, it can convey a lot more like meaningful emotions sometimes. And so, one example of this would be like if you're reading a prologue, right? And you can say like, our hero starts his journey on the balcony, right?
Right.
So that's fast, and you're trying to get the story moving along. That's urgency. But the meaning of that changes if you slow it down and make it more mysterious and make it a hero starts his journey on a balcony. And that's the very, you know, like trailer-esque, like honest
Right.
movie trailers, like in a world, like
In a world. Yeah, I get
the
that.
speed in which that's done impacts the way it's understood. So if I'm wanting you to like speed up, it'll be like, hey, can you like hurry up? Like that's
Yeah.
obviously egging somebody on. But if I were to say, hey, can we hurry up?
Yeah.
You can still tell there's an urgency, but the
It sounds like
tone is
anxious.
less impatient. It sounds anxious, exactly. So the tone and the pacing and acting and pitch all come together for voice technique, and all of those things factor into voice acting. So it's not as easy as just reading.
Right.
But those are some ways to get started. The best way to improve in any of those things is grab a practice script. Just like I was saying earlier, that sometimes getting into a character really help you learn.
Yeah.
Literally find us. There's so many free scripts out there. Just look up free voiceover scripts and try reading it. Try reading it at different paces and different tones. The way I improved sounding with a boy voice was I would sing songs, attempting to use that voice as long as I could.
Yeah. That's
and
something that
really
blows my mind, by the way. That people can sing in their character. Like, okay, I watch a lot of Animaniacs.
Mm-hmm.
And have you seen like the 50 States song or the Countries of the World
Yes.
songs? Yeah. How in the character voice, how do they not slip up? That sounds just incredibly difficult.
Yeah,
so
it requires a lot of practice. So not everybody can sing, and not everybody can sing. And I struggled with it a lot more when I first started, and now it's not so hard. So, everything is down to practice. It's, again, a skill, so the more you practice, the better you get.
Absolutely.
I would recommend if people are singers, singing is one way you can really increase your range. So if you want to try singing in character and pushing your voice, now don't push to the point that you lose your voice, but pushing your voice, you can dramatically see improvement faster because you're stretching your vocal cords more.
Yeah. How do you warm up to do that? So how do you warm up in a way that you don't fuck your voice up?
So for some people, it's like the falling down motion. So it's like woo, woo, like that is one of them. Sometimes it's like the burr sound. So some people go like, it's the same. Yeah, yeah. It's the same as It really is very similar to vocal warm-ups for like, what was I gonna say? It's really similar to vocal warm-ups for voice. So if you're a singer, often the same warm-ups you'd use to be a singer would also work. So some people do brain teasers. It's not brain teasers. Tongue twisters.
Tongue twisters.
Tongue twisters. Yeah. So some people do tongue twisters, and that's a way that they can practice with their voice. Some people work their way up. So like if you're gonna be in a screaming, like Dragon Ball, like Kamehameha session, work up. Don't just like slam hard. Like I'm gonna scream straight up. Like stretch. Use your voice a little bit beforehand.
Yeah.
Also hydrate. Hydration is very important. So
reminds me.
Yeah, so water's good. The two things, and I touch on this a little bit later, but two things you want to avoid before going into studio is dairy. So don't eat dairy or drink dairy prior to coming into a studio session because there's natural like salivation noises that like mouth clicks that you hear. And if you eat dairy, it increases salivation, and so you'll have more mouth clicks when you eat dairy beforehand. And the other thing they tell you to avoid is soda, and some voice actors are very, very bad at this. I am personally very bad at this as well. I just try to avoid drinking it before a session.
Right.
But you can drink it in the in-between. It's totally fine. It's just, it makes your voice a lot more scratchy, and it makes it easier to damage. So the things they recommend is water for sure and tea.
Oh yeah,
tea really helps a ton.
I remember from when I did theater, tea is huge.
Yeah, so you can help prepare yourself. Also, I've heard, and I've not tested this, but I've heard that green apples can help with mouth clicks. So some people will eat a green apple before coming in to studio to help with mouth click noises and mouth dryness. So
yeah, I'm learning a lot from this. I'm gonna take some of this into my streaming.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to say that you shouldn't be drinking the soda you're drinking, because I have definitely done that.
Yeah. Well, like I feel like I just have a scratchy voice as like in general. I'm not sure. Like I mean, you've talked to me in real life. I'm not sure if you agree or disagree, but I feel like
it's not super raspy, but because like some people like what surprises me is the people that can like rasp for days. Because some people like sound like they've been like smoking for like 30 years.
Yeah.
Because they can put that much rasp in their voice. I'm like, my god, that's so... How are you not damaging it? So like for me, I can do a raspy voice, but I can only do it to a certain level before I'm straining. For other people, no problem. They can add rasp and it doesn't hurt them.
Right.
And so again, everyone's voice is different. And so some people, like for me, I can naturally hit like the boy voice, and if I did the same line as like a girl voice, it would be like, "Mommy, I'm hungry. Can I have dinner, please?"
Oh
So
my
it's
goodness.
higher. That's not a strain for me at all. I don't have to think to use that voice at all, because it's natural. Versus I can't do rasp, but I know a lot of people who can't do kid voices because higher range is out of the question for their voice type,
That's
so.
higher range is out of the question for my voice. I have a very bassy voice too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you can always work to improve it and get a little bit higher, but you're definitely, you know, not going to be voicing a high-pitched pixie anytime.
Oh,
so.
absolutely not. That would be hilarious. I get animated, like it's all animated like a pixie, and then I just come in, I'm just in the bass. That would be hilarious. Just subvert some expectations.
My favorite was in I watched an abridged series of Captain Sakura, and like Kyubey, the little like cat.
Yeah.
They gave him the deepest voice possible. It was hilarious. I was dying of laughter. And that wasn't even the joke. It was like part of the joke. There was a lot of jokes happening, but the fact that his voice was like, there's this cute ass cat, and then he's like, "Yo, hello." And I'm
Yo,
like, what
hello, what's up? How's it going, dude?
It's like that one cat with the deep meow.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen
Meow.
that yet.
Yeah. It's in that. No, it's amazing.
So funny. Yeah, but we can move on to the next
one.
All
right, let's move on to the next one. Home studio.
Yeah. So, fun fact: a home studio really can just be a pillow fort. So the thing with home studios is, so I'm currently not in my studio, and that's because my studio has zero light, and so you wouldn't be able to see me at all. And so oftentimes, if you're just a beginner starting out, you can use things like pillows and blankets. Those work wonders because they absorb sound.
Right.
And so what happens when you're in a space like this with echoes happening is the sound is bouncing off of the walls into your microphone. And so you want to prevent that from happening by treating the space around you.
Right.
And so some people will put like blankets. So for me, mine is blankets. I have one pillow in there, but it's mostly, I have a lot of heavy blankets that I like cover in it's not a 4x4, but it's a square box kind of setup. And it's covered on all sides with blankets. And so it's completely treated all the way around. And so that counts as a home studio. You don't have to have like a legitimate like music studio inside of your house. It can literally be, I've designated a corner, I've made it out of PVC pipes, and I've had many friends who have booths made out of PVC and just blankets.
Right.
And it works. As long as you have an isolated space. And so when you want to move up from blankets and pillows, you can also use acoustic foam. So that's like those kind of eggshell looking things you see in music stores.
Right.
The big thing with acoustic foam is you have to have it 2 inches thick because the 1 inch does nothing. It does absolutely nothing to help you. So you need it at least 2 inches. Some people really don't like acoustic foam because it's one of those finicky things. It needs to be relatively consistent all the way around. So if I only have acoustic foam on like 2 sides of my wall, you can tell that one part of my wall have acoustic foam.
Right.
Now, that's totally fine if you're gonna do like if you're in a corner, right, Josiah, you can be like foam and then 2 blankets. That's fine because you're treated all round. But if you only treat like one wall, it doesn't always help a whole ton.
Right.
Especially with if you have, so I didn't touch on this in microphones, but most mics are cardioids. So the way that they get sound is in a cardioid fashion. So they take some from behind and a lot from the front.
Okay.
Versus you have stuff like a shotgun mic, which is the ones you see on top of cameras, and those like are directional. They point straight at. It's the mics that I point at you and I can hear you.
Right.
Versus this cardioid will pick up all of the surrounding sound. And so that's why these are used mostly for voiceover as opposed to shotgun mics.
Okay. Sweet. Right.
So, yeah. So
my housemate Caden just made me a burrito.
Woohoo!
It's got pretzel pieces in it.
That's an interesting burrito.
He wanted to prank me, but I checked it first because I know Caden.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is you can get move. Actually, the blankets people use to move with when they move furniture are super thick, and those work super well for voice acting purposes because they block a ton of sound. What you're wanting to prevent is the sound going out, bouncing off the wall, and coming back into the mic. So when you have a kind of like protector in between, what it does is the sound goes through the surface, hits the wall, and comes back through the surface before hitting your mic. So by that point, the sound waves have gotten so quiet that you can't pick it up. That's why you want to ideally be at a point where you've treated your space well enough that I don't have to noise remove, because my space is so well treated that the outside noise is just getting filtered out. And I'm not in the best space to demonstrate this, but on on Audition, you can monitor your level.
Oh, sweet.
And I've done this before, and I think if Caro's still in chat, I've done it with Caro specifically. So Caro's one of my friends from Twitter. What I did is I recorded in an open space, and I was at like -24 decibels.
Right.
Right? On background noise, just room tone. It was like -24. And then I covered it with a blanket, and it went down from -24 to like -40. So it went down like 20 decibels was already covered by the blanket. And then when I went into my studio, I went down to -50. And so you could hardly hear any background noise at all, because that's how the sound treatment works. So that was like my demonstration of going into different setups. Just putting a blanket over significantly impacts the amount of sound. So that's also why some people have like socks, or like they put like the not pop filters, they put like the filter on the mic.
I thought that was a pop filter.
It can be because it also prevents the air from hitting the mic. So those are both used in both ways. It's also called a windsock. So
yeah, I've got a windsock on mine.
Yeah, it's mostly because when you record outside and it doesn't help a ton with the wind, but it prevents the wind from directly hitting the mic, so you can sometimes deal with it.
At least it can be edited out, maybe.
Yeah, so you can sometimes edit it out to a degree, but like that's when you hear like the giant explosions on microphones where it's like super loud and windy. It's because it wasn't protected.
Yeah, no, I've done recording for like Ultimate Frisbee in windy tournaments. That's disastrous for audio quality.
Exactly, and because it's so loud, and if you don't have a protective cover on it, it's just the air is hitting the mic diaphragm and it's shaking the whole thing, and then that's when you get stuff with peaks, which I'll go over a little bit later when I'm talking about editing. But that's where you get like peaked audio. So that's where you're hearing like audio at maximum volume and you can't even tell what's so distorted. That tends to happen with wind. And so then the final thing with this is you can invest in something called a whisper room. Those are, again, super expensive. I think the cheapest starts at $1,000 and it moves up from there.
Wow.
And it's basically like buying a mini shed to put in your house, but it's a sound treated room. So you're basically buying an isolated room to put in your house.
Okay.
Or your apartment or wherever you are. And
Sweet.
That keeps the sound inside completely. You don't need to invest in a whisper room. Not everybody needs one. If you are recording and you can find a space that works, so closets in particular work great because they're enclosed. There's no windows. You want to be away from windows because those take in a lot of sound from outside. Right. And the other thing is closets tend to have clothes, and clothes also act as sound absorbent. So if you're recording in a closet, a lot of people record in their closet actually, or they build stuff into their closet, like they designate a closet as the closet and soundproof it. Because it's an enclosed space, it's small enough that it's not a huge room. So right now I'm in an open concept layout, so my audio may echo a little bit.
It's just a tad.
Yeah, so it's just a little, and it's only because I'm in a echoed like spot. But if I was able to block off this backspace and made this into a room and I sound treat it, this is still too big of a space. Right. So you want it enclosed enough, but not like too big of an enclosed space. And so you don't need to, invest in getting a whisper room if you have a house or you are able to PVC like spaced area well enough that you can sound treat it that it works. Okay. So it really just depends on where you live and how much you're willing to invest and afford. It's, again, that's a pro thing. but I know tons of professionals who don't have whisper rooms.
Yeah.
So it's not necessary.
I'm just thinking about, like, in terms of streaming. I'm like, wow, I've done everything wrong. I'm next to a window in the corner without a treated space. I'm just a noob out here.
Oh, it's totally fine. I didn't know a lot of these things down the line. Like I said, I was...
Your audio just cut, by the way.
Oh, no.
And now it's back.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Dang. I accidentally touched the cord.
Alright.
Yeah, but no, exactly. So, you know, I didn't learn a lot of these things until much later. I ended up taking audio engineering because I loved editing and mixing audio. And so that's where I learned a lot of the stuff I learned about home studio treatment setup, because that's not a lot of people teach that from the get-go. They like teach you the techniques, how to be a voice actor, but they don't teach you how do I actually make my space sound good, because I could be a great voice actor, but if my audio is awful, I'm never gonna get cast.
Right.
So, oh, and that's another big discrepancy in the voice acting realm. The word is cast. I was cast for a project, not casted.
Is there a reason why?
It's grammatically incorrect. The grammatically correct way to say I was,
it's cast.
Past tense is cast. And so some people get really upset about it, and some people are like, it's whatever, I know the correct one, it's okay if you mess up, but like some people like really take it seriously. That sounds
like prescriptionist versus descriptionist kind of deal there.
There are some things, like it's again with the USB, and some people take that very seriously. Like some people are very anti-USB, some people support it. There's a lot of like nuanced kind of drama-esque, which is true in almost every community. But you know, it is what it is. But the technically grammatically correct term is cast. Lots of people still use casted without knowing, and it's just how it's gonna be.
That's how, it is how it is.
Yeah, so you know, I can't really get cast for a project if my treatment isn't that good, and not everybody learns about proper treatment. It's something that you can look up. For anyone that does music, they also go through sound treatment, and unless you're building like a literal like isolated room that is meant to be so isolated you can hear your own blood in your veins, you can't over-treat a space. So you can't do too much unless you're actually like actively building one of those rooms. Like, I'm pretty sure the quietest room in the world, I think, you can hear the sound of your own blood.
Yeah, it's like the University of Minnesota, I thought, right?
Yeah, it's a super intensely quiet zone. Unless you're building one of those, that's too much. But you can't really over isolate. You're only over isolating if you're already at like 0 dB. There's like, you can't detect anything and you're still adding more in, then maybe you're going a little too far.
Right.
But you definitely can. And then again, pro tip, you want to cover your entire space, especially metal. So if you have anything metal near you...
This is metal.
Just like you're breaking all the rules.
I'm breaking every rule.
Yeah, so literally, you want to cover metal because that rattles. And so that causes extra vibration, which may impact your audio. It's not like a definite bad thing, but like I used to record all of my stuff on top of a metal rack without ever realizing that was why sometimes my audio sounded tinny, and it was because it was literally vibrating on top of metal. And so I was like, wow, I'm so smart. And so I ended up replacing, well, I didn't replace it, but I just covered the shelves with cloth so you couldn't actually hear the vibrations. So you have, you know, easy fixes and works around. If you just cover metal, that's enough. It just needs to be covered so the vibration.
Fair enough.
So,
yeah. Sweet.
So we can move on.
Yeah, sounds good. And then, you can go crazy in those rooms. I've heard about that. Like, people can only last, like, what, 45 minutes?
Yeah. I think the longest was an hour, or somebody like, went insane.
Yeah, that's... I given how intrusive my thoughts can be, I couldn't do it. Absolutely not.
I'm curious how long I'd last, considering how much I talk. So.
You're just trying to fill the room with noise. So it's like...
Yeah, I'm not good at the quiet game. It sucks.
Yeah. All right. Are there supposed to be pictures on this? Did I screw it again?
No, I don't have any pictures on any of these for.
Okay.
Very talk oriented.
Makes it absolutely. I just want to
Yeah,
make sure that I didn't do something wrong.
Nah, you're good. None of the other ones have pictures. It's only at the beginning.
Sweet. Okay, so auditions.
Yeah, so with auditions, when you are getting a role, it's not as easy as like, hey, can I project? Give me a role. A lot of people do that. You'd be very surprised how many people go in thinking that that is not how it works at all.
Oh, absolutely not.
Especially in the semi-pro realm. And so, when you're getting to more professional work, you have something called a casting call. And what a casting call is it's the same as in theater. It's a call to cast people, a casting call.
Right.
And so what it does is it has the project description, or any good casting call, I should say, because some are really bad and you know it just from looking at it. But it should have the project description, what the project's about, what the characters available are. Sometimes they'll have requirements for mic setup, so they'll tell you like you have to have an XLR, or it'll say please use your raw audio, don't edit anything. Sometimes they'll have instructions, sometimes they won't, but it should have the description. It should have the characters should be described. Sometimes it'll have voice type, sometimes it'll have accents. It'll say like this character should have a British accent, or this character is a female in her late 20s. She's very hyperactive and energetic. So they'll have those descriptors. So you know, like, let's say the character is a 30-year-old male. I am obviously not going to audition for that character because I read the description ahead of time to know that's not the role for me.
Right.
And it really helps if you know your voice type by that point, because then you'll know, oh, this is out of my range. So sometimes, like, I can do lower-voiced females, but it's not my cup of tea. I'm really not the best at them, and I know a lot of people that do, like, strong lower voices better than me. So
right.
While I could audition, and, you never know until you try. Sometimes you gamble and put it out there.
Yeah.
And so, I gambled and put it out there, and I ended up, this is actually a true story. There was a role that I thought I wasn't going to land, and it was for a podcast I'm in called Mythos. It's on YouTube. I don't think the next season is actually going to start because I've lost contact with the director, but it was a lot of fun to be a part of, and it was the first major, like, I was the lead character. Like, that never happens because I'm always a side character. I was like, oh my god.
Wow.
And so when I was auditioning, I was convinced that I couldn't do this character. Like, I read the description, she was meant to sound young, but I was replacing a previous voice actress, and this is so true for a lot of people. Try to avoid comparing yourself to the competition, because you get in your head a whole ton, and then you're convincing yourself, no, I'm not as good as this person. This person's definitely gonna get it. And so, because I had listened to the original voice actress, I thought they wanted something sounding extremely similar to her. Her voice was significantly lower than mine, and while I could hit that range, it didn't sound correct. So I ended up recording it at a higher voice, which is the voice I'm using now, actually. So the character, it's a little higher, actually. I think the character was around up here, so this is how I generally spoke and talked the whole time, and it was a little higher than my normal voice. And I was like, I'm not gonna get this character. And I waited until like the last 15 minutes until the audition closed, and I was like, I'm just not gonna send it in, And then finally, 10 minutes going in, I was like, I'm just gonna send it. I already recorded it, I already got it in, might as well. So I just sent it, right? And 3 days later, I got an email back saying I had gotten the part.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, oh my god, I didn't think I would. And it ended up like being one of like those life-changing experiences to be a part of. I learned a lot being in that project, especially about being a lead for once. And that was like, the director gave me one of the biggest compliments I ever received as an actress, is they had said that I had embodied the character far beyond what they could have ever imagined. Like that, like the voice that I had used apparently was exactly, and even more so, what they would have wanted for it. And so they were like, you truly have embodied it beyond all of my imaginations. I was like, oh my god,
that's really great.
Yeah, I was like, that's so fantastic. And I thought that it was a bad voice. I thought it was a bad voice for the character. So you never know what voice someone's looking for.
Right. So I gotta say that I gotta do another ad. Elijah's right, big dubs. Hey, if you don't want to get ads on my channel, I have to do ads right now because pre-rolls, you know, that's Twitch's fault, not mine. But yeah, I'm going to use this to use the restroom because I actually really got to go. But if you don't want to get ads, you can sub with your Twitch Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription. You could use it on me. You won't get ads on my channel. You'll also make me very happy and probably make my night. So that, you know, there's added bonuses both ways. We also get emotes. I'm getting more emotes drawn. But for now, I'm going to run a 60-second ad break and use the restroom.
Yep, I'm going to go plug in my laptop. So
sounds good. Oh, fuck. All right. Can I just turn into the seat? There we go. I'm such a fucking old man. I swear, like, I'm 22 going on 80. Like,
I feel like the old person age is in 20s because people that like reach their 20s, like, at some point, you just feel old. Like, I used to be like, I could stay up all night long, and now I'm like, I'm in bed.
yeah.
It's 11, and I don't want to be up anymore.
Right? No, I can still, like, stay up and stuff. It's just that I make noises when I sit down now.
It's like a struggle to get up.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Absolutely. So we were talking about the big dubs you got. That wonderful role you got. You embodied the character better than anything they could have imagined.
Yeah, that was a fantastic role to be a part of. And so, but tying that in, that's where casting calls come in. So they had described the character as a female, and I had based my assumption on somebody else's voice rather than trusting my own. And so that's one big thing about voice acting is trust your own voice, trust that you have your own set of skills to bring forward to the table, and you never know what a director is looking for. I have had times where that was one, but I have had times where I've auditioned a character just to challenge myself, and then I got cast for it, and I was like, I wasn't expecting that at all.
Right.
It's not what you think. So there's such a thing as being typecast, so, and this is true in theater as well, you just constantly get the same roles. So like for me, I tend to always land children, because I can get the child voice definitely down.
Could you do the boy's voice again just for the people who are just joined in?
I definitely can. Do you have a different line?
Or God. Hey chat, somebody drop a line you want to hear in a young anime boy voice right now, real quick. I'm gonna take the first thing, unless it's inappropriate. Raven's gonna take the first thing that she wants to do.
That's valid.
And then while we're waiting for that, we'll just but yeah, you generally get typecast as children.
Yeah, I tend to be. So, and it's mostly because I can do both the high-pitched female and the high-pitched male. Sorry, the low, like the young boy voice.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah, so that took some time to get there. I at one point, this was a joke. So I was at a study session for chemistry, and someone's like, "It's better when you read your textbook out loud because you can retain the information." And one of my friends was like, "Well, Raven's a voice actor," and then I was like, yeah, I am. And they were like, "Can you like voice act the book?" And I was like, that's gonna be so boring.
Yeah.
And I was like, what if I just did this as like a boy, like a young boy voice? And
right.
So I did that, and my friends looked at me like I grew another head. They're like, "That's not you."
Yeah.
Where's
okay.
the recording? So.
Elijah just posted one.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right.
Let me see. All right. Old Man Spills is 22, but really is 35. Avery must really be rubbing off on him.
It's so crazy. what you should do on YouTube is you should just read copy pastas in your different voices. That'd be amazing.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. So. Yeah. The thing that this is like weird, but a lot of people really like hearing like high pitched females reading like weird things from the internet.
Yeah.
So I've read some really weird stuff. Like I've read some really weird comics.
Right.
By request. So.
Huh.
Yeah. So, tying it into auditions though. So casting calls will they'll have the description, they'll have the character description, and then they'll have character lines. So typically there will be at least 3. So it'll be like, here's one line, and typically there are 3 different emotions. So it'll be like, here's one line, say this like proudly. This line say scared, and this line do angrily. And they're trying to. Typically they're taken from the script itself. So sometimes they'll take it from like the actual script, a voice line that you're going to do at some point, or they'll make it up based on the character. And they just want to see if you can, 1, retain the character throughout different emotions, and 2, if you're able to act those emotions. So if they know in their series that this character at some point is going to have a huge blow up, then they may include that as a line to audition for, so that, you know, people like they know that you're capable of doing that scene later on down the line. So that's what the audition part of it is. And the way that would work is that's what you record. So you have the 3 lines and you record them. Typically it's the standard is 2 to 3 takes. You sometimes want to do, some people prefer 1, which is really hard because I could read, again, you could read the same line like 3 different ways. And there was someone I watched on YouTube one time who had said this, and I take it to a T. You should only have more than like 2 takes if they are significantly different than each other.
Right.
So if I'm gonna record the same thing twice, it might as well have been 1 take. So you should have differences between your different takes. So maybe one of them has a higher pitch than the other one. Or maybe one of them you read the pacing differently, but they need to be different enough.
Right.
And someone else had said, if it could be animated differently, they're different enough. So if you take out all the context of what it is, if you can imagine the scene, and the scene changes in like the way you'd imagine it playing out, like as an animation or a video game, for example.
Right.
Then you know your take's different enough. So if it changed the meaning, it's different enough.
Yeah.
And so you'll record for those, and then you'll send them in, either through a service, which I listed a couple here, and I'll go into, at least so you can either upload it to a service, like Casting Call Club, or it's through email. So you'll email over your takes to project email, and then they'll listen to all of them and then cast people from there.
Right.
So these websites for casting calls, which include Casting Call Club, which is known as CCC, as everybody in the voice acting community. There's also Behind the Voice Actor, which is BTVA. And then there's a Discord server, which is also an online forum called Voice Acting Club, which is VAC. And those are all places that people post casting calls for you to audition for.
Sweet.
For CCC, typically you upload it to the audition and people can hear. Casting Call Club is a special place because it's public, so you can hear other people's auditions. For some people that's a benefit, for some people it's not. Because again, you get into the habit of listening to somebody else's audition.
Right. No, that's something that
oh,
like,
dang.
yo, I would get so much imposter syndrome if I started going through other people's, like, wow, I really don't belong here. What am I, you know? Exactly.
And so the recommendation, especially if you're using to record first, upload it, and then listen. Don't listen before, because their performance could impact yours.
Right.
And you don't want to come across as copying somebody else. You want it to be your own.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big things with it is Casting Call Club is public. Same with, I think BTVA is public. I don't think it's being used so much anymore. But VAC tends to be email. So you'd email stuff in. They also have a Discord server, so sometimes you can post into the server itself, but oftentimes it's email.
Makes sense.
And then you have things called pay-to-plays. So pay-to-play sites. So you pay money to be listed on their website, and then companies that are paying projects will have you in their database, and then you're eligible to audition for projects. So that includes that includes sites like, I think Voice Bunny counts as one, Voices 123, Voice.com. And those are, again, widely disputed by the community. Some people think that it's not worth the money to pay because it's a subscription basis, and it's really expensive to maintain.
Yeah.
And you don't get cast very often. Oftentimes, the amount of money you invest in is the amount of money you get out, so you don't actually make profit much, so it's not the most cost efficient. Now, if some people really succeed on pay-to-play sites, but it's not encouraged. If you're just starting out, it's definitely not encouraged that you pay money to voice act.
Just like with starting out to stream, you don't want to immediately sign up for Streamlabs Prime and all these other services. You want to. It's not business. It's not good business sense.
Yeah, so it's not worth it unless you're at that point, and at some point you have some in that will help you a little bit, but it's not the best spot to start.
Right.
Some people though have definitely made it, and it is successful for some, but it is often not very successful for many. So it's not always the best return investment.
Right.
And so the other thing I have on here is to slate or not to slate, and so slating is when you say what you're auditioning for at the beginning. So it's, hi, my name is Raven, and I'm auditioning for the character of blank.
Right.
You know? And so some places require you slate, and some places say not to slate. And so the standard now is if it doesn't say to slate, then don't.
Right.
So if it doesn't say explicitly slate your audition, then don't slate it. So
that makes sense. I'd imagine that slating was probably more common when it was in person.
Yeah, so it used to be because you drop off CDs. If you didn't have internet and emailing and stuff, you drop
all this
off
fancy technology.
Yeah, you would just drop off a DVD, like a disc of your voiceover reel, which I'll go over. And typically with your reel, you'll slate it so they know who you are.
Right.
Nowadays with the internet, it's not necessary to slate because they can see who you are. Versus when it was a disc that you just received dozens of discs, there's no way I'm gonna know who each person was. Versus now, I can link you to my website and to my YouTube account and to all of the other previous works I've done, so you know who I am. So it's fallen out of practice, but sometimes they'll ask you to. So
right.
If it does say, make sure you slate your auditions, it literally means to say, hi, my name is this, and I'm auditioning for this character. And sometimes they'll say slate for all of them at once. So it'll be like, I'm auditioning for character A, B, C. Or it'll say, do it in every separate take. So you do all of the lines for, you slate the beginning for each individual character you're doing.
Right.
So it definitely depends.
Yeah. Have you ever auditioned for more than one character in a project?
I have frequently. So oftentimes, you tend to audition for as many as you can.
Right.
As many as you think you're capable of, because you're increasing your chances of getting in. So the more that you audition, the better chances you'll get into
that makes sense.
Role. And so I often will audition for 2 or 3 depending. Sometimes a casting call will only have 2 characters available, and so you only audition for 1. And so if you like, no, this is out of my range and I can't do it, sometimes you just don't audition at all. The more you familiarize yourself with your voice, the more you know what roles you definitely can't audition for and what roles you can get away with.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so like there are times where I push myself, like this is not a traditional role that I would ever audition for, but push myself and see, because you never know, maybe you will be cast.
Yeah, don't limit yourself by your own brain. That's your takeaway. Yeah.
The worst thing that could happen is they say no and you're back where you started. So like, it doesn't hurt to audition. The only time you're going to damage yourself is if you like somehow really do bad on the audition to the. I don't know how you would do so, but you would have to like make the director upset in your audition. Now, sometimes people remember you for doing something egregiously bad, which is the big one is impressions. So impressions can help voiceover. There is nothing wrong with doing impressions. However, impressions aren't explicitly just voice acting because it's such a small niche market for you to find an impersonator. And if they can hire the original, they will.
Right.
So if they could hire Morgan Freeman, they're not going to hire a sound-alike of Morgan Freeman. They'll hire Morgan.
Right.
So,
or like in Avatar, when they cast the Boulder, they were thinking of casting The Rock, But they ended up casting a sound alike for The Rock.
Yeah, and so sometimes it'll work because they're out of budget, but oftentimes they'll cast the original if they can, and if that person is a voice actor who is still currently in the business, it doesn't benefit you to copy them because they already have a name.
Right.
And you're copying somebody who has a name. So I often get told I sound like Jeremy Lay, who is a voice actress for Lucy from Fairy Tale and Asuna from Sword Art Online. And I can change my voice to sound very similar to the way that she does.
Right.
So I can do that as an impersonation, and I've done it before, and I've landed roles because I could impersonate her. But I don't want to make a career out of being an impersonator because I want to have my own like dreams and aspirations and goals that are for me and not being seen as someone's sound alike. But for some people that is a career. And so it's better to avoid getting into impressions. You can use them to increase your voice, because the thing with impressions is practicing with impressions is a great way to practice your voice as well.
Makes sense.
And so, yeah, so
like whenever that makes sense from just my experiences with sports. Like I often learn motions by emulating somebody else and then taking what I like, what I've learned from doing that, and implementing that into my own style. And I feel like it's not bad to emulate as long as you don't make that your only calling card.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't want to be a one-trick. You want to have multiple things up your sleeve. And so a lot of people made it by on impressions. I know many actors on YouTube who started with impressions, got super big because they were good at impersonating, and then they made their own careers from there. Yeah. And so, you know, there's ways you can still use impressions and still get into stuff. I constantly still voice for comic dubs, which to some is considered unprofessional. But I'm not imitating a character. I'm taking my own spin on a character and not exactly sounding this one to a T. There's always something different. You can't, even if you get close as an impersonator, you're never always gonna fully sound like somebody. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so that was the thing with auditions, is you can't really mess up unless you do something really egregiously bad.
You can't really mess up unless you really mess up.
Yeah, unless you really, I don't know, like you could do some inappropriate thing and say inappropriate things while in studio that could get you outed. Right. But like, unless you're obviously doing, especially as a home voice actor, unless you sent in something super egregious, I don't think anything bad's gonna happen. Right. The worst is you get told no and you get rejected and move. So. Yeah.
All right. Is that the next slide?
Yeah.
Sweet. There we go. The demo reel. Also, hi, baby.
Yes. Hello. Yeah. So demo reels. So the thing with demo reels is it is actually a resume for voice actors. So as opposed to, you can still have an actual resume as a voice actor, like a paper copy resume. Right. But this is the one thing that people will look for first, because so with work experience, right? With any resume and job, you write down what you've done, and then people will sometimes call your references to confirm that what you did actually lines up with what you say. That's the same thing with a voiceover reel. They need to, it's one thing for me to say, I can sound like a little boy. It is another thing for me to demonstrate. And so a voice reel is a compilation of all of the range of emotions and pitches and acting ability that you have all in a 1 minute take. And it's 1 minute of typically 6 different slots, and you're trying to showcase all of the talent you have possible. So they have a demo of what you sound like. So if I have, let's say I am casting for a young boy character, right? And I'm listening to somebody's demo reel, and they have a voice in there that's a little boy, and I hear it, and I'm like, you know, that's quite similar to what I'm looking for. And so I know that because off their demo reel, they're very close to what I'm looking for, so I can reach out to them and hire them. So oftentimes demo reels are sent to people in lieu of auditions. So sometimes they won't even put out an audition call. They'll say, send me your demo. They'll listen to everybody's demos and find off of the demo who's the closest to what they want sounded.
Makes sense. How do you choose what you select for the demo reel? Like, how do you choose which 6 slots? What your 6 slots are
It
gonna
really
be.
depends on you. So what you're capable of doing, your strengths. You should never put something that's mediocre on your demo because you only have a minute to impress somebody. And the thing is, it's a minute long, but the majority of people that listen to a demo, you have 10 seconds. It's the same with an ad. You know how like ads you have like 5 seconds or something to make an impression? For demos, typically you have around 5-10 seconds. You better deliver your best on there. And so find the voices you do the best, the emotions you convey the best. So for me, on my demo, I have one high-pitched female voice. I have one rowdy boy voice. I have my normal sounding voice because I use it the most often. One that's extremely dramatic, so I have a full-on crying death scene in mine. Because I'm really good at faking crying, which sounds terrible, but like
it sounds good. I mean,
yeah, so you know it works. So I'm really good at faking like sounding I'm sad, and so I ended up putting it in there so I could indicate to people if they're looking for a character who can sound very sad and can sound distraught, then hire me because I'm capable of doing it, and I'm demonstrating that in my demo.
Right.
So typically you don't want to start a demo until you. So you shouldn't just like from the get-go, let's make a demo. Now it can help because you can see the improvement over time of how your voice has changed. But don't like send that to companies. Like, it's not the best thing to do.
Right.
A lot of people pay for a demo, so I paid to have my demo done. Mutual on Twitter, but they can get pricey. Everything in voiceover is just pricey. It's not a super cheap hobby if you want to like make it big.
Right.
So those can cost a couple $100 to get one mixed. Some can cost up to $1,000 depending on the prestige of the person who's mixing your audio.
Right.
So
we gotta start an ad. I just realized.
Right.
So remember, if you subscribe, with your free Amazon Prime, you get to not have ads, and you get to participate in just sort of chats we do behind the scenes. And yeah, we're gonna start a 60-second ad break so we don't get more pre-rolls.
Let's hear it for pre-rolls.
Pre-roll, yeah. I'm legitimately learning a lot. I'm gonna take this into my streaming.
Yeah, if you ever have any questions as well, feel free to reach out. Like I
want to share with you some, like, I've done shoutcasting. You can see the highlights on my Twitch channel actually, but like it's definitely stuff where I'm learning how to use my voice, because I know like what you're talking about ranges, right? Well, like I know that I have like a deeper, slower range. This is like more monotone, but like I can work within this range, you know. I can this is more like, this is how I do tutoring voices sometimes. I often have this deeper, more authoritative voice if I'm trying to get people to fucking listen to me. But the problem is that's nasally. I'm still working on getting that to be less nasally. It's weird.
And so I don't naturally have a nasally sounding voice. I do have a nasal tone, and it's because I can like switch it off and on.
Right.
So it's beneficial to learn, especially like familiarizing yourself with your. So like, where is the sound coming from? Is it coming from the back of your throat? Is it coming from like your voice box itself?
Right.
Is it coming more from your nose? Like recognizing where those different parts happen, and there's no way to teach that. You just have to learn. So you have to learn like when I'm rasping, it's coming from back here, or like it's coming from my diaphragm or something like that. Like you really have to familiarize. With those things.
Absolutely. So you said there's a 1 for every field on this slide. I think that's where we're going next.
Yeah. So with demo reels, you can have multiple. You don't have just one overarching demo for every. So
your audio keeps cutting out at the end of a statement. It's like, you know, it's almost like it's dropping below like a noise gate.
Does that help at all?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I just like upped the gain.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I didn't talk about with internet.
Oh, it did it again.
Dang. It might just be the cord itself.
Technical difficulties. It happens.
We love.
Hey, I mean, that's just one of the things with live streaming, is that technical difficulties will happen.
Yep. Can you hear me now? Am I still cutting?
You're good now. It might just cut again. We'll see. You're usually good when we say, we can hear you now.
Yeah, it's good,
then it's the next sentence after that. But you didn't drop there at all, so we're probably good.
Okay.
We're probably fine.
I just wiggled around some chords. So it's often a chord problem, especially with XLRs. It tends to be the chord.
Yeah.
It's finicky. So so there's one for every field, in which case that means you can have a demo for literally every single field of voice acting. So I have one for animation, but some people have a separate one for video games because video game voices are much more realistic.
Right.
Like anime and animations are very cartoony. You can have some extreme stuff happening in cartoon world versus a lot of video games like Life is Strange, you know, or games like The Last of is it the
Last of Us? Yeah, the one that just won Game of the Year.
Yeah. So a lot of those games are like even Cyberpunk right now because it's really big.
Yeah.
Like all of those games are much more realistic sounding. You're not gonna hear like a Kermit the Frog happening during.
It cut out again.
Dang.
Kermit, yeah, it stopped right at Kermit the Frog. Yeah, but that gets me thinking, like, anime video games being different, and then there's Persona, which is an anime and a video game.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have that. A lot of them get adapted that way.
Yeah.
And so it really depends on the game itself. So yeah, so there's one for every field, and you can have one specific to like e-learning if you do a lot of e-learning. You can have one for podcasting. Some people have some specific for like documentaries because they do a lot of documentaries. So you can subsidize because like commercial is one. So like commercial is a huge field. But let's say I specialize in medical commercials because I'm good at pronouncing all the hard medical terms because I'm pre-med student.
Right.
Then that's a subsection. So I can make a commercial demo and then I can make a demo just for medical voiceover to separate myself out. So if I know the project is looking for somebody who wants like medical terms to begin with, I could just avoid sending them the commercial one and send them the one specific for the thing they're looking for so they know that I can deliver what they're looking for.
Right.
So you can subsidize even smaller than where you're at. So like animation is one. Sometimes people will subsidize to visual novel. Visual novel can sometimes have its own separate one. Animation is general. You can subsidize that to anime and cartoon. Like those can be two different things because those have different tones. Anime is very, very over-exaggerated, whereas some cartoons are not as much. And so you can differentiate. And there's also language, like you can have language ones. So let's say I do voiceover in multiple languages. I can have a Spanish reel to demonstrate that I can do Spanish. Some people have singing reels to also indicate that they can sing in character.
Right.
So you have a different demo for every subset of things that you do. And it can get really like niche. Like I said, like there was someone I met online on Twitter who does specifically medical and science voiceovers because they were like me, they have a BS in chem. And so they can pronounce all of the really hard words that other people would struggle with. So it would benefit you to hire them because they've worked in like biology and chemistry labs and can pronounce these words. You don't have to teach them. They can do it on their own already. So you have a little bit of an advantage there. And it's the same with languages. You have an advantage if you speak more than one language because you can voice act in it. So like I can get away with speaking some Spanish, but I cannot voice act in Spanish. Right. It is way too hard for me to do.
Oh, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a different level of comfort. Like I can talk in Spanish. I'm bilingual, but I feel like the same way. Like I don't think I could do tons of voice acting in Spanish. I feel like I could, if I were to start putting in effort, I feel like I could do voice acting in English. I know I have range. I know I can convey emotion. In Spanish, I'm pretty one track. Like I can convey emotion and such. I can be mad in Spanish, but in my voice and like that. Yeah, that's it. Like if people are looking for my specific Spanish voice, great, but that's not a lot of range.
Yeah, it can be really difficult. So I had a friend, it was a fun challenge. Had me voice act in Spanish because he's from Mexico. Right. And so he translated a bunch of dub over scenes and I had to attempt to voice match it. Man, was it fast. We were using My Hero. It was so fast.
Oh yeah,
it was so
Spanish
bad.
anime is ridiculous.
I was like, good God. It's like as fast as a telenovela.
Yeah, it's like Dominican baseball broadcasting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's insane. And so, you know, if you can speak another language, it's a definite benefit. And so that's what the demo was really used for. And it's very useful because in addition to sending an audition, if you send your demo, sometimes they'll listen to your audition and you're not what they're looking for, but they listen to your demo and they go, actually, one of the voices on your demo is closer to what I was looking for. So they might cast you off of that. Or it could be, actually, you sound like a different character that I had in mind that I haven't casting yet. So actually, you'd fit a different character. So they might reach out to you and say, hey, you actually sound very similar to a different cast. Would you want to take that role instead? So sometimes they can help you get into another role instead of the one that you auditioned for because, you know, you showed that you had versatility and range.
Right.
So
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, they tend to be a minute to a minute and 30. You should not ever put impressions on your voice reel because a lot of people will discount you.
Yeah.
So avoid that. Not that impressions are bad, but avoid putting it in a professional reel.
Yeah.
And secondly, never go over a minute 30. That's pushing it. Like,
oh yeah.
Ideally, they want you to be at a minute or less. A minute and 30 is the maximum. If you go past a minute and 30, they're not even going to listen. It's too long.
Yeah, that shows that you don't know how to pick out the best.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's the big thing. And again, you should put your best forward. Your best voice should always be the first voice you put on your reel. But all the other voices on your reel should also be good. You shouldn't pick something mediocre to fill space. If you don't have enough to fill the space, then make your demo shorter.
Yeah.
Or showcase more emotion if you can, if you don't have enough pitch ranges and voices.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the big thing about it. You want to impress them enough to listen to the rest. Because if you can impress them with the first 10, they'll listen to the end to a minute. If you lose them in the first 10 seconds because your first voice was not that great, they're going to click on the next one. They won't even hear your line. So you have to arrange carefully as well.
Do you feel like you have to really tailor your online presence beyond your demo? Like, if you have your professional demo and you don't put on impressions or anything, do you feel like you also have to tailor, like, if you were to do YouTube content on your own, like, you're like, okay, I need to make sure my YouTube content isn't showing too much of this either? Are they going to be upset about that? Or is it the demo really just sort of the bread and butter?
It depends. So this is actually highly debated right now. So a lot of people have been discounting fan dubs and saying that they are terrible because they're infringing, which is true. Fan dubs, if you don't have the rights to dub it and it's from Japan, you are technically violating their copyright by creating it and posting it online in a public setting. But a lot of professional voice actors have been discounting it and saying that you'll get notified from because a lot of companies don't want to run the risk of running into a copyright issue because you have content out there that's copyright infringement.
Yeah. Now,
this is debated because a lot of those people who were calling those out also did fan dubs when they started out, and that's how they got started. And so it's very hypocritical for some. And so it's a little bit of a nuance. A lot of people would argue as long you can do it on your own as long as you use an alias. So there's your professional name that you use for and if you have an alias you use, you can do voiceover without the consequences of linking the two. Right. I'm in a unique boat where my alias and my name are associated to each other, so it's not really separated.
Yeah.
But I'm also not trying to break into the pro field, so it's not that big of a deal to me. I'm still landing indie work, primarily where I work inside of. I'm not landing union jobs by any means. But a lot of that really depends on who you're trying to, because some companies don't care. Right. A lot of indie developers don't care at all what your starting was as long as you delivered. But there's also a number of companies that are bigger named that will be like, no, we can't run the risk of having copyright infringement on you.
Right.
So.
Sweet. Tex, I'm not gonna be playing Disc Space in this specific live stream. I might play some Disc Space later. But tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time, I'm going to be shoutcasting for the Disc Space League. But yeah, thanks for checking in. Is this the next slide?
Yep.
Alright. Editing. Oh man, I need to take some notes and editing.
Yes. Editing. So I didn't actually go into this a whole time because it's kind of its own separate thing, but I can still talk as an audio engineer to a degree about audio editing. So The one thing I would recommend people use is get Audacity if you need one. If you need just any, it's called a DAW, which is a digital audio workstation, which is where you work on audio. So if you need a DAW that's cheap, Audacity is free. So you should download Audacity and use it as a starting basis if you don't have access to one. If you do have like Audition or something like Reaper, Reaper has a free trial, but it's got a huge learning curve. It's super hard to learn how to use because it's the pro standard.
Right.
But they do have a free trial for quite a while. And so they're a really great company and they're really great about DAW. It's just super hard and daunting to learn.
Oh yeah.
But if you're looking for something easy, Audacity is where I would start. The way you'd record is you set up your microphone and you would go onto Audacity, make sure you set your microphone on Audacity to the microphone you have plugged in, because sometimes you forget and you're just putting in laptop audio and you'll record like a whole session and then you realize that all of your audio is wrong and you're like, oh no.
Oh, earlier today, so this is the first stream on my new computer. I just built a new computer so I can stream more than 2D games, which would be nice. And anyways, I hadn't set my default microphone to my Snowball yet, so I was using my HD webcam mic. And this is a $15 webcam from Amazon. So this microphone is garbage. Like, absolute garbage. Like, if I were to switch to this, y'all would run, because it's so bad. Like, there's a redeemable sound, like on my, I added a soundboard to my channel. And on the soundboard, there's a thing that I recorded earlier of me reading this copy pasta or like weird cringe Sonic thing with my bad mic, and oh my lord, I'll send you the audio later, Raven, because
that's hilarious.
It's so bad it becomes funny again.
I feel that there's a lot of running jokes about people with phones, tin can like through like tin can and string because it sounds so bad. But so what you would do is, and I see there's a question about Audacity, which I will get to shortly, but you'd record audio onto Audacity. You hit the record button, make sure you have the right microphone set up, record your thing, then hit stop. The one thing that people forget to do, which is really important, is before you even start, give it a little bit of time. So you have, you want to have a couple of seconds of background tone so you can edit it out. So assuming that you don't have the best sound treated space, that you can just get rid of all the background noise, right? And you just want to get rid of the white noise that's there, record like a second or two of just background noise, like no sound, no nothing. So you can get, it's called room. So you get what the room is like. Then do your lines, and then don't just end abruptly. Wait until the end, finish your lines up, whatever session you're doing, and then give it another end, and then hit stop.
Right.
And then from that point, that's where you can edit. So you'll take that 1 second at the very beginning, and you'll highlight it in Audacity, and then you'll go through noise removal. And this is true for all noise removal. You'll go into, if I run it on Audacity, you'll go into Effect, and there's something that says noise removal. And it's a 2-step process. Noise removal is always 2 steps. It'll ask you to get a noise profile, or on Audition, it's called a noise print. What it does is it basically takes a fingerprint of the audio that is the background tone, and you'll like run it through. It'll identify like everything. What it does with this print is it identifies everything that matches this print is background noise, and I don't want it.
Right.
So you'll get the noise profile, then highlight your entire file, and then go into Effect, noise removal again. And then at the bottom, it'll say the actual noise removal. So that's where you can change like the percentage of how much you remove and whatnot, and how many decibels it's removing off. What noise removal does, it doesn't actually get rid of the audio. It decreases the decibels so you can't hear it.
Right.
So if I like boosted the audio, if there was nothing there, I could get the white noise back. It's just decreasing the decibels so you can't hear it audibly. So we as humans cannot audibly hear the
Yeah, so, putting it below the perceivable range. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's all it's doing. So you're gonna run the noise profile, and then it's gonna filter. So then what it'll do is it'll run through matches what you said is background noise, it'll be like, oh, okay, you don't want this, and it'll decrease the levels for you, so it gets rid of the white noise completely in the end. So that's how you can clean up your audio to a degree. And that's extremely important because a lot of auditions will not take you if you don't know how to understand, like, how to get rid of. If you look up on YouTube, like, Audacity removing white noise, that'll walk you through step by step what to do. But that is so key and so important to landing any role at all.
All right.
And then answering this Audacity question, there is a lot of lag when you put multiple sounds on one track. So what tends to happen, honestly, is you have to just manually adjust it. So what I've done in the past with mixing audio is I'll have the original file was fine, there was no lag. And then there's like a little tiny bit of lag when I record a second file. So you'll just have to shift it over back to the original spot it's supposed to be at. I don't know a specific way to fix the lag in. That's just how Audacity works. Audition's way better about it, but it does cost money because it's an Adobe product.
Right.
They're very expensive. So
everything's expensive. All these products.
Yeah, the only way to combat the lag, to manually bring it back to there's a move tool. If you see there's a tool on Audacity, it looks like two arrows, like pointing out in two different directions. That's the move tool. So if you click on that, you can move a track forward or backwards. So you want to move it to where it's supposed to be. It will always lag by a little bit when you record a second track. I don't know why it does, but it's always done that for me.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and so the other big things with Audacity is you want to normalize your audio sometimes. So you record at a certain level, but there's like a normal hearing range that people normally hear voices at. And so if you go into a normalize, you can set it to a certain decibel range. So like the standard for voiceover is -3 decibels, -3 dB. So if you normalize to that, it'll take the highest peak you have of your audio and it'll adjust that so it's at -3 dB. So everything will be adjusted so it's at the closest it can to normal human sound. So if it's too quiet, it'll boost it so it's at the proper volume. And if you're too loud, it'll boost it down so it's at a normal speaking volume. So that's what normalizing does.
All right.
And the thing with normalizing is if you have already peaked, and this is what I talked about earlier, peaking and wind, if you see that you have capped out, like there's a flat line at the of your audio, you are peaking and there's no saving. You cannot save a peak. It's distorted and it's gone. So what's happening is your audio is so loud that it is outside of the range of detection. So I don't know if you've watched like Chernobyl, but they were talking about how like they had these like and it would detect radiation to like 240 or something, but the actual radiation was 10,000, but it could only measure 30.
Yeah, no, I've seen that specific part of Chernobyl.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, it says it's only 240, so it's still fine. But then the scientist in Chernobyl was like, poison. Yeah, the scientist that called in is like, that's the maximum thing that it can measure. So it might be beyond the maximum scale, and they're only measuring it because it's the maximum.
Right.
And so basically, that's the same with audio. So sometimes the audio, if it's too loud, it's outside what the thing can measure. So it peaks out. So you can't hear the top and bottom of the audio anymore because you've gone beyond the range it can detect it.
Right.
So that's why it sounds so distorted.
Yeah.
And there's no saving peaking audio because you've lost certain bars of detection.
Makes sense.
So
before you answer the next question, I have to run the ads. I'm gonna run a 90-second ad break. Sorry about that, chat. Pre-rolls suck. Thanks, Twitch. If you don't want to deal with these ads, whether they're the ad breaks or the shitty pre-rolls, please subscribe. I do ad previewing. I wish I could give ad previewing for followers, but I can't do that. Anyways, I'll be back soon, and we'll just talk about whatever. Right? I'm learning a lot. I'll definitely contact you for tips and stuff.
I've run many 101 workshops in the past. With trying to get people into field, because I started from not really knowing anything to getting to where I'm at now.
Right.
And I wanted to give other people that opportunity. So
sweet. I'm sending you. I'm copying a link and sending it to you. This is me
Is this a bad
shoutcasting.
Sonic? Oh.
Oh, I'll send the Sonic thing too. Actually, now that I remember. The one I just sent you is me shoutcasting. You can just look at whatever in there.
Mm-hmm.
This one is a very short clip of bad Sonic. Cringe Sonic OC read. And it's really funny to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to hear this.
Yeah. It's so bad. It's so crunchy.
There was a game that published that had voice acting this bad.
Really?
Because they didn't have a budget. Yeah, they didn't have a budget for voice acting. It was like rated one of the worst voice acting games.
Yeah. No,
you should look those up. Those are hilarious to watch. The worst voice acting in video games. It's so funny because people just think that voiceover is like, it's so easy. It's not cheap because it's the same as like, why do you pay so much money for a plumber when it only costs like $40 for like a new pipe? And the reason being is you're paying for people's expertise. You're paying for the fact that they have 15 years of experience and they've gone through the training and all of that. You're paying for training. Same with voiceover. So there's a lot of people out there that'll be like, well, you're so expensive. I could do it for free. And I'm like, great. Then you record it yourself.
Yeah.
And demonstrate that you can get the same quality that I can create. So
Exactly.
And that's the same with like artists out there, with that artists that charge money. They're like, you're too expensive. I could draw better. Then like, draw better.
Do it. Prove it. Put your
do it if you can do it.
Exactly.
Like they're like, I don't even like you anyway, and you're like, okay, sorry that you don't have money,
right?
But I don't work for free all the time, so I make exceptions. I do work for free for friends, and under certain like requested conditions. So like if it's someone out of my connections that I know that needs help,
yeah,
I will definitely work for free. But I often don't take like free work. It's not beneficial to my time.
And it's just like I feel guilty. Like Tiana actually is making an emote for the channel, and I was like, "Can I pay you?" And she's like, "Consider it an early Christmas present to somebody I'm looking forward to work for in the future." Work for. Holy shit! That sentence derailed fast.
Yeah.
Look, consider it an early Christmas present from somebody I look forward to working with in the future. Which I'm definitely gonna work with you in the future, Tiana. But like I'm big on like paying my friends.
Mm-hmm.
What their work is worth, because I don't want to. I might ask for like, hey, can I do this in like a couple payments because I don't have tons of money. But like,
yeah,
I'm like, hey, I don't want to like shortchange you because you're doing good work, and I want to show that I value that.
Yeah, and I've definitely done stuff discounted before. I'm actually employed by my mom works in pediatrics, and I'm actually employed by her firm to help them create video content, and they're paying me for that at my rates, which is really awesome. And so it's not like, oh, my daughter can just like make it for you. They were like, no, we're going to pay you for the work that you put in because we know that video is hard. And so that's the thing that people appreciate about working in this field, is people that understand that it's cheap. Like, great, you can record it yourself, but I did pay like $500 for a setup for a reason. I need to pay bills, so exactly. So yeah, that's the big thing with like pay and getting stuff at the right level. And so oh
yeah, we had a question that we were gonna get to, but then I had to run ads because Twitch.
Right.
So the question Tiana has is, oh, got it, okay, so when you're recording, I have a lot of breaths that I have that can be obnoxious. Do you know how I can reduce loud breaths?
Yeah, so one way is making sure you can, and this is something you can do if you have a script in front of you. It's hard to do when you're like free falling, like this podcast is like free for all.
Yeah.
But if you have a script in front of you, the easiest way to fix that is you can plan in your breath. So sometimes you can put in like, take a breath here. So some people use a slash, some people use a comma where you'd put a natural like pause so that you have enough time to take a breath in between. So it's not like, it's the same with singing. So like if you sing too many notes without taking a breath in between, you're gonna have a giant breath before you continue the next part.
Yeah.
So knowing where the correct parts are to breathe can help.
Yeah,
and also learning breath control
for theater and for singing. Back when I was soprano, how about that? Weird.
Wow. Yeah, but like yeah, but you can plan those breaths in, but also working on breath control as a theme can significantly help, because it's helpful if you can, you know, go for longer on one breath. So if you practice breathing techniques, one of the biggest ones is it's this like breathing in and out exercise, and it's very intense. But basically, you breathe in and out super fast, like hyperventilating, breathing out as fast as you can, keeping your core tight until I think it's like you count to like 50 or something like that. So you do 50 of those breaths. And then you take a big deep breath, and so you're increasing your lung capacity. I don't remember the exact method of this. Like, I don't remember the exact numbers and all of that, but I've done it. And afterwards, because you're taking in so little breaths at a time, you're training your lungs to be able to function with more for less.
Right.
I guess. I don't know the actual science.
To get more mileage out of each breath.
Yeah, and so, like, I know there's a couple of techniques. So if you look up, like, vocal techniques, again, a lot of voice acting, singing. So if you look up vocal techniques for increased range, that can also help. It'll also help you if you want to hold your breath in to have better breath range. But anyone that plays a musical instrument, particularly in band, so if you play any woodwinds or brass instruments that require a lot of breath control, any of videos about breath control for any of those things, either singing or for playing a ensemble instrument, those can also be really helpful in helping you improve like the breath quality. I've literally had a line before, and it was written in the annotation, and this was for the same podcast, Mythos. There's a scene where I'm just supposed to ramble, and it's a super long paragraph, and her note at the top was, try to say this in one breath, but when you run out, it's okay to trail off because I'm going to interrupt you. So you don't have to get through the entire paragraph. Yeah. Just go as far as you can in one. Well, I made that into a challenge. So I was like, I wonder how far I can get into this paragraph before my breath runs out. So I tried really hard, and I think I got one sentence short of reaching the end of and it was a super long paragraph. It took up like half the page. Wow. And the way I got around it was reading so fast to get through it so quickly to get it in one breath. Yeah. And then I got an @ mention on Twitter, and the creator was like, Raven just did something so hilarious. I just sat at a wall and laughed for like 5 minutes. And I was like, great. What did I do? And she was like, you could like work in an auction. Like, that's how fast I was reading. Yeah. It was super intense, but you know, that's one way you can practice as well, is try to see how far you can go in one breath. And don't force it, but do it over time. And this is true for all parts of voice acting. Yeah. Everything is subtle. Again, your voice is a muscle. You have to work it out slowly. Same with your lungs. Your lungs need to be built up slowly. So every day, practice how far can you go in one breath. Get to a point that you're comfortable, then push a little bit past your comfort zone. When it starts beginning a little bit uncomfortable, maybe back down to where you were at. And over time, you'll notice, you know, this like little back and forth movement where I'm here, then I pushed here, and I'm going to go back, pushed here, going to go back, pushed here, going to go back. You'll slowly improve over time. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened with like the boy voice that I was using earlier, because I think I can demonstrate it. It used to be, this is the lowest that my voice could go, and it really isn't that low compared to earlier. And I kept pushing it to the point that I can now sound like I'm way much lower than I was. So, you know, there's a huge difference between here, which still sounded kind of boy voicey, but one of them is definitely not my voice at all.
One of them is legitimately Ash Ketchum, but not the same but like that kind of like boy voice. Yeah, like
Pikachu, I choose you.
Oh my god, it's so crazy. Yeah. Especially knowing you in real life and then seeing you say that with a very similar facial expression to how you talk normally, but with that voice, it just throws me for loops.
I know, and I have a friend that does really good impressions, and watching him go from he's insane. So like shout out to, he's also a streamer, so shout out
To what?
He's a streamer as well on Twitch, but he does video game streams. His name is Carson. His Twitch handle is Explodacy. But he
can you send
does
that to me in a PM?
Yeah, I can. He does insane impressions. He mostly does video game work, but like it's crazy. Like watching him straight face go from like Smeagol from Lord of the Rings to Shaggy and then Scooby-Doo and then Kermit all in the same sentence and then Elmo all in the same sentence.
Oh my goodness.
And it's the same guy and I'm just like, my god.
Bruh.
Stop it, you're freaking me out. Like it's so jarring. And I understand because that's the same thing for you. It's so jarring to you feel like you know their voice so well and then it just comes out and you're like,
yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with like a customer service voice, right? It's like, thank you for calling Pickles Deli. This is Josiah. How can I help you today?
Yeah, and I work the front desk. Yeah, I work the front desk here on campus, and I definitely have that voice. And my older sister hates it because she's like, you sound so fake. And I was like, it's the happy, I'm happy to help you voice. Of course it's meant to sound fake.
Yeah.
So it's like, thank you for calling. How can I help you? And it's like, I would never speak that way. I also have
you can just hear a bunch of just depression in that voice too. It's like, I'm happy to help you, but I also hate my job.
There's also like the tour guide voice, like, and if you look to your left, you will see that we have giraffes available. And you know, it's like
giraffes available.
I was thinking of Animal Kingdom in Disney.
Yeah.
There's some giraffes on your left, and if you look to your right, you will see our beautiful hippopotamus. And you know, that's the voice they use.
Right.
And you know, it's like the staged voice. So, you know, there's different tones for stuff and everything. But yes, I hope that answered your question about like breath control though.
Yeah, for sure. So I went to the next slide.
Yes.
Benefits of voiceover. You touched on the run your own business thing a little bit.
Yeah. So the nice thing about voiceover, especially if you are an at-home voice actor, is I record in my pajamas often. I don't have to try. I could roll out of bed, get water, and then go into studio, record, and make money off of that. And there was no effort required other than the training I got and like me actually being able to act. Like, you can decide your hours. So if I want to record at 2 a.m, I can record at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It's up to me. It's my schedule. I determine every moment that I'm doing it. And I can just take a vacation whenever I want. So it's like, you know, I don't want to voice act for a while. I'll take a vacation.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing about running your own business. You decide your own hours. You decide your own rates. You decide how much work you're willing to put in and do. And so that's really the thing with running your business. And it is a private business because you're getting money from using your voice. So I have rates. I have, I don't actually have a calling card, but I do have like
I thought persona. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're good. Still in the persona zone. No, but like, seriously, like all parts of it is your own. Like I have my own brand. I'm working on getting a logo for myself.
Right.
I have a website that hasn't been published because I've been slowly working on it. And again, it's my own business. So there's no rush for me to get that website done. It's whenever I want to get it. And I've been working on it for a while, but with school, I was waiting until break to really flush it out and get it ready for 2020. 2021.
2021. One of those years.
Yeah, you know, 2020 wasn't really a year.
Yeah, time's not fucking real. I had like between March and August, I barely remember shit. Like I moved during that time, and I remember like 4 things, and 3 of them are related to moving because time hasn't been real.
Exactly. And so so I was wanting to get it. So I'm really wanting to kick off more of my business and have a look 2021. So I'm on my own time. So I'm not answering to anybody. It's my own business. I decide my clients. I can pick my clients as well. So like if I don't want to work with you, I don't have to work with you.
Exactly.
You know, so as contrary to, we've had some really egregious people in the voiceover community on Twitter, and someone at one point was like, you're a voice actor, you have to work for me. And I'm like, no, I don't. What are you talking about? No, I don't. And so he's been banned from the community for many reasons, but that cracked me up. He's like, you're a voice actor, so you have to work so you can get work. And I was like, no, because I have lots of other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So So again, you can work remotely from home. You don't have to be in a studio. Some people still go to studios, but again, you can make your own studio setup. So let's say somebody needs a pickup line. So like, let's say I recorded and I mispronounced a word or I missed a line and they said, hey, can you re-record this real fast? I don't have to book another studio time to fix the one recording. I can just like, okay, sure, I'll just go back into the studio, record it quickly and send it back over.
Your home studio with the blankets.
Yeah, exactly. The pillow fort. Literally a pillow fort.
Literally a pillow fort.
So yeah, that's nice. It has the flexibility, again, with your schedule. And then there's the creative aspects of it. You really get to be creative. There's not many jobs that can say that you never day is go.
Right.
Because one day I could be playing a dragon, and then the next day I could be playing a high school teenager, and the next thing you know, I'm playing an orc monster. So like, you know, it varies so much. And sometimes I'll record all in one session. And what's crazy to me sometimes is like one session in like maybe I'll record for a 2-hour period, but I'm recording like sets of lines.
Right.
And one of my lines is definitely like this, like voice that I'm using now. And then a different voiced character is like grotesque monster noises. And then the next thing you know, I'm sounding like I'm a happy-go-lucky individual.
Right.
And those are 3 drastically different things, but it all happened in the same hour. And it's so wild.
That must be exhausting on the vocal cords to a degree too, because you're probably using different motions of the vocal cords.
Mm-hmm. It definitely can be, but since I've been doing it for so long, it actually doesn't strain me a whole ton. I find it's harder once I go past the range.
Right.
Then my voice is like, nah, you need a break, fam. But
exactly.
It also depends, because if it's a voice that I don't strain, high-pitched voices, the boy voice, my current speaking voice, and the kind of Asuna Chermi-Lay-esque voice that I use, none of those require anything out of my voice. The only thing is I'll notice, like, after a while, I'm like, my throat is dry. Maybe I should take a break.
Yeah.
But it typically is around the 2-hour mark. I don't understand how the screaming, like, Kamehameha people can maintain it for so long.
Something that's weird for me is that my garbage, I've got a really garbage southern accent, and this is really easy for my voice. Like this, like, it does not strain my voice at all, but it also really sounds like shit. I mean, I can do, like, I know I gotta relax the jaw, and I know, because I teach language, that I know how to work with my tongue and the position of my mouth.
That's actually pretty good.
It's because I got family and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people say they can do Southern, but they can't. And that's actually pretty good. Yeah. And there's actually different types of Southern.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is so fun. Because, like, Texas Southern is completely different than Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, depending which part of the South you're from.
Mine's like a DFW-ish, like outskirts of DFW kind of accent.
Yeah, and it's the same as, like, New York has, like, 5 different accents depending on which you're in.
If you're in Brooklyn versus the Bronx, like...
Yeah, it's, like, drastic.
Yeah. There's, like, 12 English accents in different directions from Big Ben. Like...
Yeah, there's so many. And accents is another thing that you can... If you can do accents, that also helps you a ton. Because then you can land significantly more roles. Now, the field is currently oversaturated with American accents. So, luckily, if you're American, there's many, many roles available for Americans. There's also a lot of roles available for British people. There's not as many roles available for people with other accents, which can be very difficult to break into the field. But there's been an up push in diversity for casting, especially in, like, shows themselves. And so sometimes they'll ask for a very specific accent, and if you happen to have that accent, you have a niche field for yourself because you can nail it. Exactly. So, like, if I was Japanese and they're looking for someone with a Japanese accent, then I can get that accent down, and I've made a niche for myself. Right. It's really beneficial if you have a knowledge to gain an American one, but don't lose your native accent, but try to work on an American one. Yeah. But also, American accented people can also work specifically on British because it's the closest, or Australian. There's a lot of Australians, recently coming into the market though. Yeah. So those are the 3 main ones in English, but also, again, branching into other languages. If you're Hispanic and you can do a Hispanic accent, all the better to you. There's a lot of push for Hispanic voice actors. Yeah. So
see, like, that's where, like, I get worried about, like, because I feel like if I were to push, I could do that accent, but I'm white, and I don't want to take roles away from people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's
also a very, you touch on, like, all of the nuanced, like, drama in the community.
Yeah.
But that's a big one as well, is there's a lot of push for casting of bi-POC people.
Right.
And it's extremely difficult because it's voice acting, so you shouldn't be limited by your...
Yeah.
You shouldn't be limited by your race, I should say. So I am Asian. I do not sound Asian. I sound unapologetically American.
Yeah.
So every character I voice is American. Now, sometimes they're Asian American, but they don't have an accent because I grew up here. Because that was me. I was born in Asia. I moved here. I don't have an Asian accent.
Yeah.
I have one when I speak to my family, though.
Right.
So I can gain it. Yeah, I can gain it back pretty quickly, but
yeah.
I never had one. I gained one from... I didn't actively have one when I first learned English.
Right.
So what ends up happening with that, though, is there's a little bit of nuance to should people be allowed to voice for, like, POC characters if they're not POC. And some would argue yes, because your voice shouldn't limit you. Some would argue no, because that stereotypes. So, like, what does it mean to sound Asian or Black? What does that actually mean to sound Indigenous?
Right.
And you're following a stereotype. And so sometimes it can be a little tricky. Sometimes they'll say preferred. So they'll say bi-POC preferred, which means you can audition even if you're not. But they would prefer to cast somebody who identifies with the character. Because if there's, like, for example, if there's two people auditioning for an Asian character, right, and one person's white, and then there's myself, and I am, someone who can imitate an Asian accent that is white might be able to imitate the accent, but they don't bring the same perspective and the same experiences I bring as someone who is Asian. So when they say bi-POC preferred, they might say preferring Asian American. They're saying that because they want the experience of the person to bring their experience to the character.
Exactly. And, like, when I go back to, like, for example, if I were to learn a Hispanic accent, there are white individuals who grow up in a borderlands area who might be able to do the accent because of their experiences. They also might bring the experience. So, like, I feel like exactly what you said there, bringing the experience, that's what, like, if you don't have the lived experiences, maybe step back, listen, provide a platform, but don't really take up the space.
Many people have argued there's many other rules out there. There's, for every, and this is where the nuance becomes complicated, for every POC role, there's at least 9 other white passing roles or white roles. Yeah. And so the argument would be there's so limited POC roles, and it means something to play a character that you identify with. Right. So, like, I constantly play Americans. It's never my ethnicity, but there was one time where I auditioned for a character who was Filipino, and I am Filipino, and it meant a lot to play a character who identifies with me. I felt like I was bringing myself to the character. I saw myself in the character. Yeah. And so it means a lot. And then that also impacts the people who aspire to be voice actors. So a lot of, and in the Black community, there's a voice actor named Zeno, and he's been fantastic about raising awareness to Black voice acting community. And there's very few Black voice actors in, like, the professional realm as a whole. And the fact that you can look up and see there is somebody like, I can do that too, impacts people. And so that's why this idea of we should be encouraging more POC, not because we're trying to gatekeep people, it's because there's so little in with. And the industry as a whole, it's not to say that it is, it's the same with, like, a lot of the infrastructures nowadays where it's just built in the system. Yeah. It's currently set up that there wasn't a lot of people of color because there wasn't a lot of characters of color. And because there's been a push of characters of color, there's been an uptick of people of color. Yeah. And so the current generation is the people who will impact the later generations to see that people of color do voice act. It's just not as common yet. And so we're slowly getting there. Over time, it's becoming more normalized, but still now there's not a whole lot of, like, professionals in the field that represent, like, people of color. And so they're slowly pushing it more. And so that's why a lot of casting, like, bi-POC preferred, or there's also been a lot of push for trans voice actors because they have the hardest time. I want to argue, and this some people may disagree, but I want to argue it is very, very hard to be a trans voice actor and be forced to, by your voice a gender you don't identify with.
Yeah.
It is so hard. And I'm not someone who understands that experience, but I've had friends who have had that experience, and it's rough. It's like knowing that you want to identify as someone else, but always being typecast for something you don't identify as. So, especially for trans and non-binary characters, oftentimes they'll say limited to trans and non-binary actors because they want to bring that perspective and experience in, because they don't ever get to use their voice in their identity. And so those are the two big things in the voice acting community that are disputed, but it's slowly becoming more liberal and accepting that we're not doing this to gatekeep people. It's being done to help other people. It's
facilitation, not gatekeeping. That makes me think. So like, but you touched on a point of, you know, having someone that you can look up and say, wow, I can do this too. With ADHD, I have that. With like some content creators, I like Crank Gameplays. Talks about his experience with ADHD as a content creator. There's other content creators out there, but like, I for a long time I was doubting myself. Could I really stream? Could I really do this? I get this imposter syndrome. Even now, I get this imposter syndrome. Like, will I? Yeah, Elijah, I'm rating there afterwards. I'll be rating there. Anyways, Hamma Bay's great. He's in Clay Crow. He was in the Clay Crows.
Oh.
And yeah, super great watch. We're gonna raid there after. But anyways, I was saying about the ADHD content creators trying to get my train of thought. Where's my train of thought? I got it. Okay, yeah. The imposter syndrome. Do I really belong here? Even now, I'm 12 followers away from 200. Not a big streamer by any means, but I'm like, wow. Why am I here? Like, am I still able to do this? And then I'm like, oh yes, there are content creators out there who are successful, who have the same issues that I do, who have the same experiences that I do, or similar, and I can relate, and I can have a role model in that way.
Yeah, and you feel it a lot in any field you work in, really, and especially in the voiceover field, because, and this is true for a lot of voiceover artists who quit, there's so much more rejection than accepted. Like, for every probably 50 auditions, I'll land one.
Right.
Like, that's how much, and this is true for theater as a whole. You will not land a whole ton of roles. You gotta get used to rejection. And if you're not a fan of that, then really it's not the... You will more likely have more rejections than casts. Yeah. Some people come across like, oh, I get cast all the time. But I guarantee you, they have dry spells where they don't get cast for long periods of time. Yeah. And they also feel imposter syndrome. Like, I'm successful. I've been successful. I don't know why I'm struggling. Very, very true for the field, and I have felt it myself where I felt I wasn't good enough. Like, a lot of my friends have moved on to be into bigger projects than me, but that doesn't change the fact that I still have my learned experiences. I still get roles. I might not be as big, but I'm succeeding in my own way. And I think that's the important thing, is for people to succeed in a way that makes them happy and not meet everybody else's standard of what's successful. If you're successful to you, you're successful.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Should we move to the next slide? We've got...
Yeah, I think we're almost done.
I think we talked a bit about this, too.
Yeah, so
I was going to touch on the lack of POC voice actors and systemic thing. Like, there's also, like we mentioned way back at the start, about the barrier to entries in terms of cost and setup. And the point you put on here, it requires a fair amount of money to go pro. Well, if you don't have the free capital to put into that, and if you don't necessarily have connections to get deals, to get and to get help with it, then you're gonna have a lot more of a lot higher barrier to entry. It's gonna be a lot harder to get in.
Yeah, so that's a lot. That's really, and that's a good thing that you. A lot of people of color, IPOC, don't have the financial means to be able to spend and drop like $300 on one purchase when they're struggling to even maintain household setups. And that goes for low economic status, not just people of color. And so it is a very exclusive field, and you have to be in a good financial spot to support it. Yeah. And so it's a fun hobby. You can get a cheap microphone for $40 probably, but not everybody even has the $40 to spend. But that's why I wouldn't recommend you just like splurge, spend, buy the best equipment possible if you're not ready to invest that. For me, it's an investment. I paid money for all of this equipment, and I've gotten it back like 5-fold in return, because I spent like, I don't know, $350 for my whole setup. I've made thousands already.
Yeah.
Like I've made over 1,000. I shouldn't say thousands. I've made over 1,000
yeah.
voice acting over the last, and it's been 6 years. It's not like I got it all in one sitting.
Right.
But that's 6 years worth of time where I have, for every investment I've made, I've gotten it back because I'm getting paid roles. But if you were planning to be a hobbyist and never were intending to get money at it, it's not a cheap hobby. It's not something cheap you can do if you want to get the best setup. If you're wanting to just podcast and do like D&D with friends and record that as a podcast, you don't need all the fancy setup. You can really just use a USB. It really depends on your needs and what you're.
Yeah.
The other hardships with this is it requires more than just a good voice. It requires your acting ability, which we talked about earlier. There's a lot more failures than success. You have a whole lot more rejections than acceptance. Like it's only been in the last year, which is 2020 has been a wild year, but for me, in terms of voiceover, it's been fantastic because everything's gone remote.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten way more requests and way more media work than I ever expected to get in a pandemic. So that's been a plus for me. But that was after having like a dry spell of not for like almost a full year, the year before that in 2019. So, you know, you give and take, you have dry spells and you have to be willing to persevere and push through to get that. We talked about requires amount of money. And then there's networking. Networking is really big. It's hard because you're an individual, you're your business, you're one person, but a lot of opportunities come from networking. And if you are naturally introverted, then it is much harder to break field because you're afraid to message people.
Right.
And this is a lot of the voiceover community is actually super introverted. So like you're not alone.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's crazy. They're like because it's like ironic of being a closet shut in. You literally like lock yourself in a closet and and so there's a lot of introverts in that field, and it's very hard to network for many because they're too afraid to make the connection. And the other hard thing is it's competitive. It's super competitive. So like even my closest friends, we will be competing for the same role. Now the thing is we have such a good relationship that I don't feel bad when they get cast. I'm like, great, I'm so glad that it went to you. I'm so proud of you. But for some people, that can be jarring to constantly have friends get cast for things that you don't get cast inside of. It's very rough on competition. So if you're really competitive, it could work. If you're kind of iffy on the competitiveness, there's a lot of voice actors who fully believe in being equitable and being fair, and they're more than happy for you. Yeah. So they're not gonna like make a giant fit like, I can't believe you got cast, I'm way better than you. They're happy for you. Right. You just have to find the right people in the community. There's a couple of bad apples, as is with every community. Oh yeah. I've vastly found way more people supportive of me getting work than other people trying to tear me down for work I've gotten. Right. And it takes a lot of patience and dedication. Because again, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. A lot of training, takes a lot of dedication to maintain and keep up with it. And so those are the hard sides. We got to run I'm going to run a 20 minutes, 60 seconds, sorry. The 20 minutes of pre-rolls off, 60 seconds 20-minute ad.
And then that'll give us time to wrap up after probably without pre-rolls.
I've only got one slide left.
Sweet, perfect. Oh man, I feel something I've noticed with every Infodump stream I've ever done is that during the first half I say like very little, and then I bring up some points in the second half, and then people are like, I feel that you've got to warm up in. Yeah, well, part of it is I'm just trying to like I want to give room for people to do the info dumping to start talking about the things, and. Like for you're very good at keeping your direction. There's been other speakers, other guests where I'm directing more, where I'm asking more guiding questions. But when I saw the prep document, I'm like, I'm adding nothing. You did the prep. You've done all that. This is by far the most I've ever gotten for a prep document, and it shows in how well we've stayed on track and how much we've covered. Yeah. But like I tend to be quite organized. Yeah. And this is coming from my background as a project manager. Yeah, no, I could tell. It's like you can see how people are just by how they prepare. But yeah, so this last slide, what makes a good voice actor?
Yeah. So, and I didn't add this as a slide, but I also tips to add at the.
Yeah.
So, what makes a good voice actor? It's dedication, patience, perseverance. Those are so key if you want to succeed in this field. You have to be dedicated to the craft. You have to be willing to, put yourself out there and be willing to keep going even when you don't get cast at anything, even if you have drive. Maintaining and being dedicated to the craft.
Right.
Patience is being patient enough to wait until you get your role. Sometimes it takes forever. There, again, you have dry spells, so being patient about when you do get those roles and when you will have time to shine, because everybody gets their own moment.
Right.
And then the perseverance to push through all of that, which goes with dedication, to be able to have the worst come at you and still say, I still want to be a voice actor, I still love this job, I really want to keep going and pushing for it.
Right.
Other thing you need is acting ability. You need to be able to convince your audience, regardless of it's a character, it's a commercial, it's a narration. You want to convince your audience something, and if you can't convince them, then you're not doing your job correctly.
Right.
So that's extremely important. Having the decent equipment to get started. So even a USB is decent enough to. Again, practicing on your iPhone first or an Android using the voice memos app.
An iPhone or the other one,
I have an iPhone and I've had an iPhone all. Yeah. And so, except for when I had a flip phone, like that was the first smartphone I had though.
Yeah, so, my first phone was an iPhone, and then I got a flip phone, because I had iPhone 3GS, and then I went to a flip phone, and then I went to a slide phone, and then I went to Android, and I have been on Android since. I'm on a Pixel 2 right now.
I went flip phone, slide phone, iPhone.
Yeah.
And it's because my family just never. We don't buy new phones. We wait until the upgrade when the upgrade's free. So
right.
I'll have the same phone for like 5 years, and then I'll finally get the upgrade, and it's like 3 generations behind everybody else, and I'm like, but I'm here. I did it.
Hey, I can do the things you did a while ago. Hi.
Yeah. So, using a phone, or even if you have a voice recorder, like if you don't want to use your phone, if you mic, it's gonna sound terrible, but that's how you get started. So having the decent equipment and willingness to get yourself out there and network. So you'll find a lot of fantastic people. If you're on Twitter, I recommend figuring out the online community. My Twitter handle is RayRayVA, which is reminiscent of my name.
Am I not following you on Twitter? I feel like I feel like I should be following you on Twitter.
Yeah, I haven't been on it in a while. I'm on a hiatus due to medical school applications, actually. So I've been off Twitter for a bit now, but it's a great community. It's a wonderful place to make friends and really get into the field.
That is not you. That is not what? It was one follower? No, that's not you.
No, it's RayRay_VA.
Okay. There we go. On break, Raven last name. Actually, you just gave your Twitter handle, so.
Yeah, if they find it, it's. I mean, I'm a public figure at this.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, it's fine, honestly. And so yeah, and I see there's one question. Not sure if you can answer this question, but when someone wants to hire a voice actor, what things should that person look for to match the character with the actor best? For me, I have visual novels that are in work, so I want looking for, and yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked as a casting director before. I've worn so many hats in this field, but I have worked as a casting director before. So the big thing you want to figure out is what tone do you want them to sound like? Do you have an idea of pitch first? That would say where I would start with first with a character. So you look at a character, you think to yourself, are they high pitched? Are they low pitched? Then have you develop their background? So has this character do they have a tragic backstory which makes them aloof and elusive? So all of their lines will come across as very cool and not very emotive. Or maybe they're a happy-go-lucky kid who's been cheerful, so all of their emotions are over-exaggerated. So when you have plotted out your character well enough, typically the voice will come right with it.
Makes sense.
You'll know, based on how well you've planned your character, how it's going to go. Now, sometimes you have no idea. Sometimes it's open, and there are casting directors that will sometimes say it's open. So I've had casting calls where they're like, I'm open to what people want to interpret this as. Go for it. And then that's full creative reign, and people get dang creative when you give them full creative reign to the character.
Yeah.
So I think there was a casting call once where there was a parrot. I don't remember the casting call was for, but they were like, it's full reign. Whatever you think this parrot needs to sound like. So some people took the traditional, like, Polly want a cracker parrot, and some people, like, gave it the same voice as, like, from Jafar's parrot. Yeah, so, like, you can, like, make it your own. So it's okay if you don't know. Even if you don't have a full description, you can just say, I'm looking for a mid-range voice actor. And then you'll have a bunch of auditions to listen to. And then when you're listening to them, you'll just find one that sticks out, that you're looking at the character, you hear the voice, and you're like, yep, that's exactly how it works. Sometimes you don't have the voice in your head, but when you hear it, you know. You know that's what you were looking for.
That makes sense.
And I've had that before, that I just, like, I was listening and I was like, no, that person nailed exactly what I was looking for. I did a casting call once where I didn't even put genders. They had descriptions about who they were as people. It was completely genderless to leave it open. And I gave them the lines and they just had to portray them. They had to portray a scene. And one person blew me out of the water with how they did a death scene, that I was like, I didn't have in mind how this person would sound, but because you got the emotion, you're it, man. This is exactly what I was looking for. So, sometimes it's okay not to know. And you'll just know when you hear it that that's the right person for you. And sometimes you don't find the perfect person, but you find someone close enough. And you can sometimes coach them to get to the sound quality you want. So I had a fan dub I was working on that someone said, your voice is great, I just need it a little bit lower. And so I did it, and they were like, no, that was spot on. That was exactly what I was looking for. But they had to coach me to it. I didn't have it right away, like what they wanted. So, yeah. And then I think the last thing I have is a couple of tips for beginners in getting started, which I talked about before, is avoiding dairy and soda. It increases mouth clicks and noises you want to prevent. Trying to warm up with vocal warm-ups when possible, using, all of the techniques that are used for vocal performance, or by doing tongue twisters. Those can help. Always monitor your audio when you're recording, because you don't want your audio to peak, because then it's unusable. Right. So always watch to make sure that you never... there's one thing I do want to note with microphones in particular, especially USBs. Sometimes you might not see visibly that you have peaked. It hasn't hit like the decibel level, but the audio sounds distorted. And that means that you have you've overshot the threshold the mic can handle. Because there's how much your computer can handle, and there's how much your mic can handle. So if you're blowing it up and it sounds distorted and you're still under the threshold, back away further from your mic. They say the best measure from how far you should be like a fist or two away. So if it's 2 fists away, then this is far from the microphone.
Just measuring right now?
Yeah, so like it's typically 1 fist should be enough. But so for me, my gain's up pretty high and I speak loud to begin with. Right. So I'm further from my mic. My mic is like this far from me. But you can hear me perfectly fine. Also, you've adjusted my audio as well. But
your audio is actually at 200% on Discord.
Wow. Yeah.
It's
Discord
because I'm louder
calls,
on my stream, that's all.
Yeah, Discord calls, I've had to do that in the past. I've boosted everybody to 200. But like, that can make a difference as well. So make sure you monitor your audio peaking. You can peak from your mic. Bear that in mind. Be mindful of your plosives, and the thing I didn't talk about was semblance. So plosives are the P sounds, or the B sounds, or the V sounds that hit your mic with air. The S sounds, so I have semblance. So if you can hear a kind of high-pitched whistle in my S's, it's just a little high-pitched. Sometimes it's particularly bad. Depends on the day. That's called semblance.
I have a space between my teeth that sometimes the air will whistle through.
Yeah, so that's called semblance. And it's like over accentuated S noise. You can use a pop filter to prevent
just so you know, there's a sound effect going on right now. Avatar's Love is playing.
Oh my god.
It was a short one because copyright.
Right.
But
so You can put a pop filter to prevent the plosives. If you don't have a pop filter, if you tilt your mic, it's called off axis. So mic should be coming at you from like a direct, like 90 degrees straight at you.
Right.
If you tilt it off axis, so you turn it just slightly off, just a little bit, it's not hitting the front of the mic, so it's picking up audio from the side a little bit. That can also help with plosives. That can also help with sibilant. So for me, I have like a very prominent S sound, so I often, when I tilt off axis to prevent how strong that S is. We also have something in in Audition called de-esser, so you can decrease the amount of S noise.
Yeah.
I use it all the time because it's awful for me. So that's one thing. Other thing is, before you buy a mic, if you have the capacity, and it's hard with this pandemic, but go to a music store and test out microphones first. Every mic is different, just like every instrument is different. And sometimes your voice won't work for a microphone you buy. Right. So the reason I got a discounted mic because I bought a microphone, tried it out, and realized it didn't fit his voice that well. He actually did better with I think he was an AT2020. So he had an AT2020, I have a Rode NT1. So he switched with me, not really switched, he bought a new one and sold me his old one because it didn't match his voice. Right. A Rode NT1 is a particularly bright microphone, so it's actually good for people with mid-tones. It's not as good for people who have high and sibilance tones. But I work around with it because it's a really good functioning microphone. Yeah. So I work around the fact that it's a bright mic. So finding the right mic for you that makes you sound the best. So if you can, music stores often have microphones available for testing. Go to a music store and test your voice first before you buy, if you can. If you don't have the ability to, you can also watch on YouTube for people that have similar voices to you, testing out microphones to figure out what might be the best for you. But that's one thing to also bear in mind. Another big tip is practice reading ahead of time. Familiarize yourself with a scene and get the background of it beforehand because it saves you a lot of mistakes in the long run. And I will tell you right now, you will make a billion mistakes when recording. Oh yeah. There are times where I cannot get a line in 5 minutes and I'm like, I literally just can't pronounce anymore. I'm trying so hard. And that's okay. There are times where you're just not gonna get a line. Right. But practicing reading ahead of time helps prepare you so you don't come up to it and you're like, I don't even know how to pronounce this word. Or it's like, I don't remember who this character is. So if you read it ahead of time, you can read back and familiarize yourself with the scene. For long-term projects, sometimes I get scripts like every couple months. So because of that, I forget everything that led up to that moment. So I'm like, why am I in a castle again? Yeah. Right, I was kidnapped. Right, that's what happened. So I forget all of that content. So sometimes it's helpful to go back and read and familiarize yourself ahead of time. It also prevents pronunciation issues. It prevents you from stumbling as much because you've read it once beforehand, so you know what it's gonna basically be. And it also will help you improve your speech and enunciation. Oh yeah. And then finally, overemphasize. You need to convey emotion without the use of body language, so you should overemphasize where you can and put in 100% always. Because as a director, as someone who's worked as a director, it is so much better to have you give me 100 and pull back than for you to give me 75 and me tell you to give me. Right. It's way harder. And so always put your best effort forward because the worst thing that could happen is you're back at square one. So.
Sweet. All right. This has been wonderful. So unless we get a question in the next 30 seconds, we're going to rate out. But yeah, Raven, thank you again for coming on. You've been a wonderful guest.
Yeah, for sure.
This has been super informative. I'm going to be switching up the layout in my room, maybe even tonight.
Wow. Yeah.
Because
definitely.
I didn't realize how much of a sinner I was until now.
It's not so bad because you can't tell on stream for them.
Yeah.
So it's only, I can say it is very, very distinct when it's just your audio on its own.
Oh yeah.
But once you add the music behind, so there's a lot of voiceover. It's hardly ever just the voiceover. There's music in the background. The music adds so many elements to your voice. So the whole like tone changes.
Yeah.
So it's okay if you have a couple of things that, you know, don't work necessarily, that there aren't the most ideal, because eventually when they get mixed together, a good audio engineer is able to fix it and work it to make it work. So
right. I think though I want to tone down the amount of sins so that way it's a little less distinct. Take away the metal thing in the back, maybe. Put that in a different spot. I've got curtains I'm gonna hang. I'm just gonna literally turn my desk so I'm not in the corner this way, but I'll be in the corner this way. But this has more open. There's more open wall space for me to soundproof it there. You know, so that might be good. And then put curtains and stuff behind me. That'd be good. But we're gonna raid out right now to Hamabe. So if y'all want to stay for that and show Hamabe the love that you've shown this stream, that would be outstanding. Starting the raid. And yeah, make sure to drop a follow for me if you haven't followed already. I'm trying to hit 200. I'm at 188 right now. And if you have Amazon Prime and you want to sub to me, that helps me out a lot. I'm trying to get to the point where I start making money off of this, and every single sub counts, every single donation on bits counts, and even just following and watching counts. It helps a lot. We're raiding out now, and thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
All right, raiding, and let's see if the raid thing works for me. All right,
came
sweet.
in. Yep.
Sweet. Twitch.tv/. It didn't work for my stream manager, but it's fine because I'm gonna do this.
Is his podcast different from,
it opened up for me, so on my phone.
The Infodump?
It's that. That's his.
All right, sweet. This has been fun.
Today he was talking